What is going on, guys, and welcome to Responsive Car Dealership with Bootstrap 4 and ES6 course. Like the name already suggests, in this course we'll be making a responsive website for a car dealership using HTML5, CSS3, Bootstrap 4, and JavaScript. We'll start our project by building a responsive nav bar with a logo, links, and social media icons. However, if we'll make our screen size smaller, the links and social icons will disappear and the nav bar toggle button will going to be displayed. Once we click the button, the nav bar will show and hide. After the nav bar, we'll build a header section with a background image, title, and shape created with a clip path property in the bottom. If you notice, we'll apply animations to a header section, so every 20 seconds we'll be zooming in and out, as well as moving image to the left and to the right. Now after the header section, we're going to build a skills section where we're going to create a title that we're going to be reusing throughout a project, and here we're going to have 4 columns with a font awesome icon that we're going to have a round shape, the name of the skill that the car dealership is going to be providing, and then some text about the skill. Now, since the project is going to be responsive, you'll see over here that with a smaller screen, we're going to have 1 column layout. Then once we get to the bigger screen, we're going to have a 2 column layout. And once the screen size gets really big, then we're going to have a 4 column layout. Now, after the skills section, this is going to be our inventory section where we're going to show all the cars that we have. Now, obviously, just for the showing purposes, we're not going to have a 5,000 cars. However, here you can see that we are displaying 11 cars. Now we're going to be displaying the 11 cars dynamically, so we're going to insert them with a JavaScript. Now here you can see that we have the buttons. So as I'm clicking, I'm just getting a American models. Then if I go up and I press German ones, I'm just showing a German cars. And if I'm going to press over here all, again, I'm going to get the whole inventory. Now for each car, we're going to create a card with a image. Then this would be the name, and then we're going to have a model. Then this is going to have a price. That's also going to have a shape with a clip path property. However, as we're hovering, you can see that it's going to go back to rectangle. Then in the card footer, there's going to be a icon with a name for the type of the car. Then over here, this would be transmission, whether manual or automatic, and this would be a gas mileage. After we have done with a inventory section, this is going to be a question section where we're going to have a 2 column layout. On each side, we're going to be asking a question to a user. Now, the icons are going to have a little transition effect. So as I'm hovering over the icons, you can see that they're going to move up. However, when I'm not going to be hovering over the icons, they're going to go back to their normal place. Then after the question section, we're going to have a featured car section where we're going to pick in a JavaScript what cars we would want to show. And as you can see over here, we have the image that's going to be zooming in. So as we're hovering over the image, we're going to be zooming in. And this would be a little icon that's going to change the color, and it's only going to appear as we're hovering over the image. Now on the left hand side, we'll have cars that we would want to display. And again, we're going to make a decision with a JavaScript. So we're going to insert them dynamically. And then as I'm hovering over the type of car that I have, and if I click on a button, you notice over here that I'm getting the image that would be displayed for the car. So obviously, if I'm going to change the car that I would want to show, and if I'm going to click over here, you notice that right now I'm having a BMW instead of Chevrolet. Then after we're done with our featured cars section, then we're going to look at our gallery section, where in this case, we're going to have a 2 column layout. However, within one of the columns, we're going to have a nested column layout. Whereas you can see, even though this is only 1 column, there's going to be 2 rows within the column, and each row is going to have 2 additional columns. Now, as we're hovering over the gallery item, we will show a different background, and the outline of the title is going to appear as I'm hovering. However, it's not going to show as I'm not hovering over the item. Now we're also going to create a modal in this section. So as I'm hovering over the image that I would want to display, I can just click it, and we're going to have our modal with a same picture that we're clicking on. So in this case, if I'm going to pick this picture, the correct picture is going to be displayed in the modal. Now after a gallery section, we're going to have a contact section. We're going to create a form, and this is going to be a submit button. Now after a contact section, we're going to have our services section, where we're going to have a background video. Now the video is going to be playing in the background, and also the video is going to have a blue overlay on top of it. Now also on top of it, we're going to have our 3 services. So in this case, we're going to have a repair service, then this is going to be a battery replacement, and this is going to be a roadside assistance. And as you can see, as I'm hovering, the service item is going to change the color. And also we're going to have a transition effect where everything within the service item is going to move to the right as I'm hovering. Now for the video, we're again going to create a clip path where we're going to change a shape of the way it's showed on the page. After we have done with a services section, we're going to have a what they say section where we're going to have 3 cards. Now in each card, we're going to have a customer picture. Then this is going to be the customer name, customer job, then some text about the customer or whatever review he's leaving. And then over here, this is going to be a Phantasm icon. So since this is going to be a responsive project, once we go to the smaller screen, we're going to have a 2-column layout. And once we go to a single column layout, we're just going to over here have a 1-column displayed. And once we have reached the last section, which would be a footer, here we're going to have a Phantasm icons that are going to be our social links. And as I'm hovering over the social links, they're going to be changing the color. So let me show you one more thing about the nav bar. As you can see, once I get past the height of the nav bar, we're going to change the nav bar position to fixed. And we're also going to change the background color of the nav bar. And we're also going to add some padding to the nav bar. We're also going to create a preloader. So as you notice over here, once I refresh the page, while the page is going to be loading, there's going to be a preloader displaying. However, once the page has loaded, we're going to make sure with a JavaScript that a preloader is hidden. So this is going to be the project that we're working on, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. This video is part of my Udemy course, so if you'd like to get source files, logos, images, and videos, the coupon is going to be in the description. Now, before we dive into course content, let's quickly cover where you can find me and what would be the best platform to contact me. You can always find me on Udemy by typing John Smilga, on YouTube channel Coding Addict, and on Twitter at John Smilga. The best chance to reach me will be on Twitter, and all the new course announcements are made on Twitter and on YouTube channel. Now, before we can start working on a project, we're going to have to do our setup. However, in this video, you're not going to have to download anything, because once you download a folder that's going to be located under the resources of this video, you're going to have 2 folders within that folder. And the first one is going to be a finished project, and the second one is going to be a setup. And in a setup, you'll see over here that you're going to have your CSS. So this is going to be a Bootstrap min CSS, a main CSS. Then we're going to have all the images that we're going to be using, including a preloader, a logo, and rest of the section images. Then over here, this is going to be a JavaScript file where we're going to have our Phantasm. Then this is going to be Bootstrap. Then we're also going to include a Jquery, and this is going to be a script.js where we're going to be placing all our JavaScript. And then over here, this is going to be a video folder where we're going to have our video for a background. Now, once we have looked at a folder, now let's look at the files in the code editor. And over here, you can see that this is going to be our index.html, where everything is linked back to the main CSS or Bootstrap CSS. Also, these would be the Phantasm, and here is going to be jQuery, and this is going to be the files that we need for the actual Bootstrap. And then over here, this is going to be the JavaScript that we're going to be writing ourselves. Then in the main CSS, we're gonna import Google Fonts, which is I'm gonna show you how to do in a second. And then we're gonna use a CSS variables, and the syntax is gonna be colon. Then we're gonna select the root, and then we're gonna place our variables over here. Now I'm gonna be using a colors for the variables, just so we don't have to rewrite these hex color values. So over here you can see that we're gonna have a main blue, and this is going to be set to some kind of hex color, and later on we're going to be using those colors by referencing them with var. And then over here this was going to be the variable name, and over here we just set a font family for a whole body. And then as you can see over here, the color is going to be the main black for the fonts, and for the background we're going to use a main white. Throughout the project we're going to be using rem values instead of pixels, because we want to make sure that our website is responsive and it is targeting the root element, and the root element normally would be 16 pixels. However, if one of your users has set up a different value for a root element, we're going to make sure that they have the same exact experience like when they're using different websites. So now that we have looked at our HTML and CSS, let's go ahead and let's look at where we can download everything that we need. But again, you're not going to have to do any kind of download. I'm just going to show you where I got everything. So just in case you want to customize something, you can go ahead and actually get it yourself. So the first thing that we need for a Bootstrap is going to be Jquery. So if we're just going to go to a Jquery website, you see over here we have download compressed. And in this case, I can just right click it. And over here we have a save link as. Now, obviously, I saved it in my JavaScript folder, so this is how I got a jQuery. Now, after that, we have a Bootstrap, and once we have visited a Bootstrap website, over here we have a download, and I just use a compiled CSS and JS. So once you click download over here, you're going to be downloading a folder, and then within the folder, you're going to have to find a Bootstrap CSS, which will be used for the CSS, and then over here we're going to have a JavaScript, which is going to be Bootstrap bundle JS. And if you previously noticed over here, we included already in our HTML. And like I said, we also need to include jQuery, and this is what we did literally 20 seconds ago. Then once we have downloaded a Bootstrap, then we're going to have a Font Awesome. And once we visit a Font Awesome website, we have a few options. First, let's look at how we can use them. So whenever we want to use a Font Awesome icon over here, we just need to use the I element over here, and then we need to write what would be the name of a Font Awesome icon. So in this case, this would be FAB, and then FA and some kind of value. So this would be the usage. But how we can actually download a Font Awesome icon? Now in my case, I'm going to be using the SVG with JS, and then you have a few options. You can just download it with a content delivery network, or in my case, I downloaded it over here. So once you click it, a download button, then you're going to be downloading a Font Awesome. Then underneath a download, we can just get a explanation what we need to include. And as you can see over here, SVG with JavaScript, this is the file that we need to reference. But since this is a JavaScript, make sure that you're referencing it in the title with a script tags, not with a link tags. And once we have looked at how we can download them, over here you can see that this would be the basic use. And again, like I showed you before, we have a I element. Then for the I element, we use class. And then over here, the class, the first one is going to be FAS. And then we have FA and the name of it. And then over here, this would be the explanation for the prefixes. So these would be a stable ones. Then these would be the ones that you need to pay the money for. And over here, these would be the brand ones, or also are free. And once we have taken a Font Awesome icons, now we can go to a Google Fonts. And with the Google Fonts, I just chose a Roboto. So if you want to pick something more fancy, you can check it out over here. You can pick whatever font you would like. And over here, if you click a plus, then you'll open up a modal. And over here, you can customize it. You can add different kind of styles if you'd want, or if you just go with a regular one, you go straight away for embedding, and then you can use a link tag that you can use in the HTML, or you can use the import that you're going to be using in the CSS. So once we have download a fonts, then after that we're going to have a images, and for the images I'm going to be using Pexel's website because I like the choice and I like the quality of the pictures. After that we're going to look at a colors, and the colors we can get in coolers.co. And if we're going to go over here, we have a free generator where we can press the button, and you can see that we're going to be getting different colors. And if I would want to lock one of the colors, you can see that I can lock it over here and I'm getting different choices. Now after we have gotten the colors, then we're going to have the video, and you just have a Pexels video where you can just search whatever video you would want. So let's say over here I'm going to say car, and as you can see that I have multiple car videos. Now obviously over here only thing you need to do is click a download and you're going to be getting your video. And last but not least is going to be the loading icon, and we're going to be getting a loading icon in loading.io, and over here we can pick whatever icon we would want. Obviously here we can customize the colors, the speeds, the size. However, remember that you would need to just download it as a GIF. And one last thing about loading.io, that they were going to ask you to sign up, but they're not going to ask you any money. So you're just going to have to sign up with an email address and have some kind of login and password, but they're not going to charge you anything. So this is completely free. And once we have downloaded everything that we need to start a project, let's go ahead and let's start working on our project. Now that we have finished our setup for the project, we can start working on a project. And the first section that we're going to be making is going to be nav bar here on the top, where we're going to have a logo. Here we're going to have links. These are going to be the social icons with a little hover effect. And then once we make the screen size smaller, you'll see over here we're going to have a toggler button. And once we click the button, we're actually going to be displaying or hiding the actual nav bar. So let's go ahead to index.html and start working. So first things first, let's create some comments. Now, before we create a nav bar, there's going to be a section of preloader. So I'm just going to say over here for the comment that this is going to be preloader section. And then let me copy and paste it. And over here, let's say end of preloader. So this section we're going to be making a little bit later. Once we have the nav bar and the header, then we're going to create a preloader, but we're going to place it over here in the index.html before the nav bar, just because it makes a little bit more sense where it's going to be sitting. Then once we have a preloader comments ready, then we'll have a nav comments. So for the nav comments, we're going to have nav section over here, or nav element, and over here let's have an end of nav element. So let's have end of nav element. Now within nav element, first things first, we need the actual nav element. So we'll have a nav. So for this, we can just write nav, and then we just need few classes. Now for the nav element in the Bootstrap, we would need a nav bar class, and then we'll have right away a px3, which is going to stand for padding left and right. It is going to be 3. So let's have it as a px3. And then also we would want right away an ID. An ID is going to be used once we're using the actual nav links. So let's just call this over here a nav bar. So this is going to be our ID. So once we set it over here, again, the padding, the px3 is going to be over here. You see this padding on the left hand side and over here on the right hand side. And obviously you can see it over here once we make the bigger screen size also. So once we're done with an actual nav element, now within nav element, the first is going to be the logo. And for this, we're going to create a link with a class of nav bar brand. So nav bar brand. And within the nav bar brand, we're just going to have an href, and the href is not going to be pointing anywhere. So it's going to have a hashtag. However, here we're going to be placing the logo. So I'm going to be having an image. Now this image is going to have a resource. So for the resource, we're going to find an image folder. Now within the images folder, we're going to look for a logo for the gear logo. So let me just see over here, I have gear logo. And then for the alternative, we can just say that this is going to be the logo. Now, once the link has been completed, once we have the logo, sure enough over here, this is going to be the logo on the left-hand side. Then after that, we would want to create a toggler button that we're going to see it on the smaller screens. See it over here. This is going to be the button that we're going to be creating. So let's have a first of a button. So first let's create a button with a class of navbar toggler. And after that, we're going to have a type of button. So the type attribute is actually going to be button. Then after, we're also going to have another attribute with a value of data toggle collapse. So data, then this is going to be a toggle value, and it's going to be equal to a collapse. So obviously these are the Bootstrap classes that we need in order to create a toggler button. Now also we will need a attribute for a data target. So where we're going to be selecting the div that we're going to be displaying or hiding. So let's say data target. This is going to be the name of the attribute, and this is going to be equal to my nav. And again, I'm going to have a hashtag since this is going to be the ID that I'm going to be creating later. So if you're having a different name over here, you obviously need to write it the name that you're going to be creating later on. Now within the button, I'm actually going to place a font awesome icon. So I'm going to have a span with a class of Nav Bar Icon, and within a span, I'm going to place a font awesome icon. So let's say over here FAS and FA bars. So here we just did a little bit of customization. Instead of regular item that's being placed within a Bootstrap button, the toggle button, we just placed our own font awesome. And once the button has been completed, over here now we're going to create a div that's going to hold all our links and social icons. And again, we're going to need a actual my nav bar, the my nav bar or my nav ID for this div. So let's create over here this div, and let's say the div with a class of collapse. So collapse. Then also we will have a nav bar collapse. So two classes that we need from Bootstrap, and this is where we're going to be placing the ID. So ID is going to be my nav. Now within this div, we're going to have a unordered list. So here let's have a unordered list with a class of nav bar nav, and also let's create right away a class of MX auto, and this stands for margin left and right and margin left and right auto. So why I'm using the margin left and right auto? See over here, we'll have three items within the nav bar. We're going to have a logo, then these are going to be the links over here, and these are going to be a social links. Now this is why I'm placing over here the MX auto, because I would want the actual links, the home, skills, inventory, and featured to be right in the center. So that's why I have the margin left auto and margin right over here auto. Now once we have created the unordered list, let's place some list items. Now the list item is going to have, again, two classes. The first class is going to be nav item. So nav item over here. And this is going to be also a class of active, but this class is only going to be for the first icon or the icon that we're actually clicking. So we'll have two classes, nav item and the active. And within the list item, there's going to be a link with the class of nav link. And then we'll have over here what would be the destination. Now, like I said, the first one is actually going to be the one that's bringing us home. You see over here we have the home one. So if we created a nav bar with an ID of nav bar over here on the top, then we're going to have also this href set as a nav bar, or basically matching whatever we created as a nav bar ID. So let me just have over here a suggestion, and here once we have the href, we'll write over here nav bar, because once we click home we would want to go back to our ID, which is going to be all the way on the top as a nav bar. And within the first link, let's just write that this is going to be the value of home over here. Let's save it. And once I click the button, you see over here I have my home link. And for now, let's just create three more links. So let me just grab over here the list item over here and just copy and paste it three more times. So once we have the three of them, now I would also want to delete this class of active, because this class is going to be applied only to a first element or when we are clicking on an element. So let me save this over here. And again, I would need to click the button, and now I can see that I have 4 values. Now also let me change the actual values inside. So here we're going to have inventory and featured. So the first one is actually going to be skills, and I already know that my ID is going to be skills for the skills section. So let me just have the ID of skills. And after that, the second one is going to be inventory. And then also the ID needs to match, so inventory. And the third one is going to be over here a featured. So let me have it as a featured, and the value is also going to be featured. So once we save it, now again, I would just need to click the button, and then I have home, skills, inventory, and featured. And once we have completed the unordered list with links, now let's create some social icons. So social icons over here. Now this is not going to be a unordered list. We're just going to have a div. So let's just have a div with a class of nav icons. So this is going to be the class that we're going to be styling ourselves. So this has nothing to do with a Bootstrap. And now also we would want two more classes, which is going to be display none and display a large block. So let me first just add a classes, and then I'm going to explain what they're doing. So first one is going to be display none, and then we'll have a display large block. We see over here, once we have the nav bar, once the screen size is actually large, I'm going to have these nav icons over here. However, once I make my screen size smaller, even after we click the button, you can see that I cannot see my nav social icons. And this is what these two classes do over here. Well, the first one says that there should be a display of none. So the nav icons should be always hidden. And then I write that actually the icon should be displayed as block starting from a large screen, which brings me to another class that we would need to add over here on the top with an actual nav item. And this would be a class of expand large. And what is the reason for this nav bar expand large? This is going to be the same way how we were working with a social icons. So nav bar expand large. So what this class says is that once the actual screen size gets to large and bigger than large, then the actual icon over here is going to be hidden, and we're going to see our links. So let me go over here. So this would be the recording. This would be the file that we are working on, not the finished one. And as you can see, once I reach the large screen size, I actually get a links right away. However, if I make my screen size smaller than large, I'm going to have the icon that I click over here, and then my links are showing. So this is the class for a nav bar expand large. And here, obviously, we can change the values from large to medium or small, but I'm just going to keep this starting from the large screen. That's why I'm going to have a class of nav bar expand on large. And similarly, since I'm going to be hiding my icon once I get to the large screen size, therefore, once I also get the large screen size, I'm going to show my social icon links. Well, now let's actually create the social icon links. And this is going to be a link with a class of nav icon. Now, also within a link, we would need an href. And I'm just going to write that this is going to be hashtag. But obviously, normally you would actually lead it to whatever the social icon you're placing. So if this is going to be a Facebook, let's just have FAB. This is going to stand for the font awesome icon that we're going to be using, and FA Facebook over here. Once I create a font awesome icon with an emmet, now the only thing I would need is just copy and paste it 2 more times. And over here, this is going to be Twitter, and the next one is going to be actually Instagram. So Instagram. Once the social icons have been created, we're not going to be able to see them over here because this is going to be less than a large screen size. So let's go to our recording, the file that we are opening in a browser. Let me just refresh over here. And as you can see, once I get to the large screen size, I'm going to have a logo. I'm going to have links that have the class of MXAuto. So they're always going to be placed in the center. And all the way on the right-hand side, these are going to be the social icons that are going to be showing only once the screen size gets past large. However, once I make the screen size smaller, you see over here, my links are gone, my social icons are gone, and I just have the button over here, which has a font awesome bars inside the button. And over here, you can see that these would be my links. And once we're done with HTML, now let's go to CSS and start styling our nav bar. Once in the CSS, we comment that we know that we're going to be styling a nav bar. And after that, we would want to target the whole nav bar. So we're going to have a selector of a class of nav bar, and let's have a background with a main white. So let's use this main color over here, which is going to be FFF which is going to be completely white color, and let's set it as a background. And like I said before, the syntax for using the variable will need this keyword of var, and then over here now we're going to be picking what color we would want. And like I said before, we're going to be using a main white, which you're not going to be able to see right now, but in a finished project, you see over here how it's going to look like. So the whole nav is going to be white, and the rest of the document is also going to be white. However, for the nav bar, for the links, we're going to have the actual color of black, and also as we're hovering, this is going to be turning blue, the main blue color. Once we have set up a background for the whole nav bar of white, then also let's work with an icon over here with this toggler icon. And as you can see over here, we have two classes that we're going to be targeting. First, we have a class of nav bar toggler, and then we have the class of nav bar icon. So first, let's work with this nav bar icon. Now we're just going to be working with a font awesome. So the selector is going to be nav bar icon, which is going to be the class name. And here we'll have a font size first. So font size 2 rems. So we're going to make this bigger. And then we also would want to have a color. So let's have a color. And for the color, we're going to have a main blue. So var and main blue. Now, once we have created our CSS, let's check it out what's happening. So you see over here, we have our icon, and the icon's font is bigger. So the font awesome icon is actually bigger. And also we change the color over here. However, I would still want to change over here this outline. Now for the outline, I would actually need to select a nav bar toggler, which is a parent element class. So nav bar toggler over here. And here we're going to write outline color, and we're going to set it to the blue. But first, let me just show you that it's working. So I'm going to set it to yellow. So main yellow over here. But since we're targeting a Bootstrap class, we need to have this flag of important, just so we are overriding a default properties. So once I have over here a important, you see that the outline is changing. And now that we know it works, let me just change it to a blue, because before, if I would just do it blue, it looks very similar to what we have already originally. So you would probably think that maybe something is not working. Now, once we have worked with a toggler, let's work with each and every link over here. And for this, we're going to be targeting the link. So nav link over here. And for the link, we'll have a few properties. And the first one is going to be the color. And like I said, we're going to have a var of main black. So this is going to be the black color. Then after that, we would also want to do a text transform. So text transform, let's have it as capitalized. So as you can see right now, my nav links have a capital letter as a first letter. And now let's go ahead and let's start working with a nav icon. Now, what would be the nav icon? The nav icon is going to be our social icons. So this is going to be our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But you know what? Maybe before we start working with nav icon, let's just do one quick thing as we're hovering over the link. So let's have it as a nav link hover, and let's change the color over here. So nav link hover, and let's change it as a color, and let's change it to blue. So var and main blue over here. Let's save this over here. So as I'm hovering over the links, now you can see that my color is going to be changing, and it's going to be changing over here to the blue. Then, like I said, next, let's do a social icon styling. So for this, we're going to be targeting the class that all the social icons have, which is going to be the nav icon class. And let's have it as a font size and 1.5 rems. Now, these changes, I'm going to have to look in the actual browser where we're working, because obviously over here, the screen size is less than large, so I'm not going to be able to see. So here, let's go back. Where is the recording? In the browser, let's refresh. And once I make the screen size bigger, see over here, these are going to be my nav icons or social icons with a nav icon class. As you see, now we changed a font size. Then after that, we're going to have a color. Let's just change the color to a main blue. After the color, we're going to have a text decoration. And the reason for text decoration is that, as you can see, we are creating them as links. And all the links are getting this annoying underline over here on the top, on top bottom right hand side. So let's have a text decoration, and let's set it to none. After that, we're going to have a transition. And what would transition mean? So let's say we have a nav icon, and we're going to have to do a nav icon hover. So as we're hovering, we would want to change the color. So let's have a nav icon and hover. So the color, let's change it color first to the main black. So main and black. You see over here what happens. Everything is working fine. However, as I'm hovering, it's happening right away. The changes are not happening over time. I'm changing the color as I'm hovering over. However, I would want to make this smoother, and for this I'm going to use a transition. Now for transition, what we're going to have? Well, here we have a transition property, and with a transition we're making this hover effect smoother. Now the first one is going to be transition property. So now we would want to say what property we would want to have transition on. So since the property we're changing is going to be the color, we're going to write a color property. Then we'll have a transition and duration. Now duration is obviously going to tell us how long this transition is going to take place. So let's do 2 seconds just so we can see how it actually works better. And then the last one is going to be transition timing function, which is going to tell us how the transition is going to take place. Now we have multiple values. We have, let's say, ease in, ease and out, or let's say linear. So let's just start with the linear, where transition starts the same way how it ends. Now also let's change this text decoration. Everything is correct, but we also need to override again the bootstrap. So let's write over here the flag of important, because if you noticed before, actually we had everything as I'm hovering. You see over here I'm still getting this underline on the right hand side. However, once I refresh and once I have the flag of important, you see over here the underline is gone. And as you can see, as I'm hovering over these social icons right now, the change is happening over 2 seconds instead of right away. And this is the way the transitioning makes our transitions from one state to another one smoother. And we're going to be using transition all throughout the project. So it's good to get our feet wet right away as we're starting with a nav bar. And once we have finished styling, our nav bar is finished and we're ready to move on and start working on the next section. Once we have finished a nav bar, next we're going to be creating our header section. So as you can see, the nav bar and the heading is going to be taking up exactly the 100% height-wise for the screen, and also the width-wise on the screen. And here we're going to have our title. Then this would be the car that we're going to trying to present. Then this is going to say the color. And as you notice over here, we have a little bit of animation going on. So every 5 seconds, we're going to be zooming in and also translating a little bit our image. So let's go ahead to index.html and start working with this section. So after the end of nav element, then we're going to have a header. So let's create over here a header section. Then after the header section first comment, let's also say the end of header. So this would be the end of header. Now within header, first is going to be the header section with a class of header and also with an ID of header. So the class of header and the ID of header. Then after that, we'll have a container fluid, since everything else in the Bootstrap, apart from once we're working with a nav, everything else we're going to be setting either in the container or container fluid. So let's have a class of container fluid. Now within the container fluid, we're going to have a class of row and also the class that we're going to be creating ourselves, which is going to be height max. And also we're going to have another class, which is going to be align items in the center. Now it's going to be much more easier to see once we start working with a CSS what happens with a height of max class and also with align items center. So let's just write these classes first, and then as I'm going through the CSS, I'm going to explain one by one what each and every class does over here. Now within this div, within this row div, we're also going to have a column, which is going to be the container for everything. So here let's have a column and medium 9, meaning that starting from a medium screen, this column is going to be spanning 9 columns. And also let's right away place it in the right side. So as you can see over here, this column is going to be sitting on the right hand side. So for this, we're going to use a margin left and auto. So we're going to be pushing from the left the container. After that, we're going to have also a text of right class. This is going to move the whole text right. And the last but not least, we're going to have a padding right, which is going to be set to 5. So a little bit of padding, so it's not exactly all the way to the edge of the screen over here. Now within the div, we're going to have a heading 6. The heading 6 is going to have a class of title heading, which is the class that we're going to be styling later on ourselves. Then we'll have a display inline block, just because we want to set some top and bottom padding. So here, let's say D inline, and let's set it equal to block. After that, we're going to have a padding. Like I said, padding all around is going to be 2. And also let's set text uppercase. And once we have these classes, now let's write the actual value over here. This is going to be the all new over here. So this is going to be the text that we're going to be writing. After the heading 5 over here, we're going to have a heading 2, which is going to have a text uppercase class, uppercase. It also we're going to have a margin top bottom 2 and title class. Again, the title is going to be the class that we're going to be creating ourselves. So title class. And over here, let's write that this is going to be 2018 Mercedes, and let's just say Benz over here. Then after the heading 2, we're going to have a heading 1. So after that, let's have a heading 3. Sorry, not heading 1. This is going to be heading 3. Again, the text is going to be uppercase, text uppercase, and let's have a model name. So model name. Again, once we open up, we have a heading 3, and last over here is going to be heading 6, which is going to have a starts from. So over here you can see that we're writing the all new. Then we'll have a Mercedes-Benz model name, starts from, and then this is going to be the price. So last text is going to be starts from. The class is going to be text capitalize over here that we're going to be adding, and let's write starts from. Then this is going to be the value of the text, and after that we're going to have a heading 2, which we're going to have a link and a price. So let's have a heading 2. Within heading 2, we're going to have a 60,000. So let's write a $, 60,000 over here. And then let's create a link. So the link is going to have few classes again. This is going to have title icon, since we're going to be styling a little bit. Then we'll have a display inline block, again, because we would want to add some padding. So display inline block. And over here, let's write also a margin left and right is going to be 2. So MX over here too. Now within the actual icon, let's have again a font awesome icon, and our font awesome icon is going to be play. So we're going to have I, which is going to stand for font awesome, FAS, FA, and let's say over here play. And here we need another dot, so FA play over here. Once we save it, see over here, now we have our heading 2 with a price and with a font awesome icon. So once we're done with HTML, let's go to CSS and start styling this header section. Now, before we start styling the header in the main CSS, let me just quickly go back to index.html because I noticed a couple of misspellings that I had over here. So first things first, over here you have text, and we need to set this text to the right. Then after that, this is not going to be a block written like this. It's actually going to be written properly, display inline block. And also last thing over here before this column, let's just add a call over here. And first things first, let's just set the whole text to white, and let's add the background image for a row. So first let's target a header, and let's have a text color white. So color, not columns, color, and the color is going to be equal to var and main white. So let's find the main white color, and let's just add it to the whole text. As you can see over here, we cannot see anything. Now, like I said, now we would need to work with a class of a height max. So we would need to make sure that this row actually gets some height over here. So height max. Before we add a height, we'll have a background, and the background is not going to have a background attachment property. It's actually going to have a background property. However, now we would want to choose the image. So here, let's have a quotation marks, 2 dots, and now we're going to be looking for the image. So first, this is going to be the image, and as you can see over here, we have a header background image. Once we save it, sure enough, for our row, we have right now a background image. However, there's a slight problem. As you can see over here, the background image is only spanning where our text is. So we would need to set up some kind of height over here. And the way we're going to set up the height, we're going to use a min height property. So regardless of the screen size, the header is always going to have this min height property, and we're going to set it equal first to the 100 view heights. Now what 100 view heights do, they set it equal to 100% of a screen size at any screen. So as you can see over here, now our image is spanning 100%, and also our text is exactly in the center. Now let me go back over here and just explain this class that we added, and this is within the Bootstrap. Since all the rows are parent containers by default, we can use this align items in the center and set it in the center. However, this row needs to have some kind of height. Now obviously we added right now the height of 100%. However, before, this property couldn't work because the background was just spanning as far as the text was going. So if you want to use this class, you also need to set some kind of height for the row that you're going to be using. And over here, let's fix it a little bit, because as you notice over here, this is going more than 100%. And the reason for that is that the nav bar also has some kind of height. So instead of just using 100 view heights, we're going to use a calc function. And within the calc function, we can just write what we would want to calculate. Now here, I would want to calculate by using a subtraction. So I'm going to say that this height max class should be 100 view heights, so 100%. However, I would want to subtract the pixels that the nav bar has the height with. So here, let's have a 76 pixels because I already checked it in the Google Developer Tools. So let me go back over here. Let me refresh. And let me show you that if I'm going to go to Google Developer Tools, then as I'm going to a elements, and if I'm going to find the nav bar, notice over here, the nav bar has a width right now of 1104 pixels and the height of 76. And this height is not going to be changing. At any screen size, the height is going to be 76 pixels. So therefore, I'm going to use the subtraction and I'm going to get this 76 pixels. Now we don't have any other sections, so we cannot scroll down. However, once we're going to have the other sections, you'll notice that this is going to be exactly 100% of a screen size. Once the background has been set, then let's work a little bit with a background image. And we have a few more properties that we can use for background image. So first one would be background position. So we're going to set the image in the center. Notice over here, now the image in the center. Then we'll have a background, and let's have it as a size. So what would be the size of the image? And we're going to set it to a cover. And the reason why we're using the cover, but because we would want to make sure that image always covers the div where it's set as a background. Then we'll have a background attachment. So the background attachment property is going to make sure that we're going to have the parallax effect. So if I'm going to set this background attachment to fixed over here, you notice that if I'm going to save it and within the finished project, as I'm scrolling up and down, you notice over here, the actual image is sitting in the background. So we get this scroll effect because the text is going to be moving up and down, but the image is not moving because the background attachment is fixed. And last, we're going to have a background repeat, which is going to just make sure that the background image is not going to be repeating. So background repeat and no repeat over here. Once we have saved all these properties with the values, let's just work with a text. And with the text, we're going to start with a title heading. So title heading. And over here for the title heading, we would want first to set a background. Now in this case, we're not going to be using the image. We're going to be using a color. We're going to be using a black color. And therefore, we're using this RGBA values because then in this case, we can set the opacity. So the opacity is going to be 0.4. So this is going to be black color with some transparency. Notice over here. And let's add a border. So border and border left is going to be equal to 0.3 REMs, solid, var, and now let's use a color. Now the color is going to be blue. So once we save it, notice over here, we're going to have our blue border. After that, we'll have a title. So for the title, we have the class of title. Font weight, let's make a font weight bigger. And in our case, this is going to be 700. Now you can see that the text got right away wider. And also let's have a font size of 1.9 REMs over here. So once we save it, now the text is 1.9 REMs. I also would want to include a media query, meaning that on a different screen size, I would want to have a different font size. So let me just have a media screen, and over here we're going to write min width, and the min width is going to be 768. So min width of 768 pixels. So starting from 768 pixels, we're going to have a title class, and the title class is actually going to have a bigger font size. So font size, and let's have it as a 3 REMs. So once we save it, right now we don't see it because we're still working on a smaller screen. But once we're going to go to the bigger screen size, you'll notice that the fonts are increasing in size because of this property and the value we set. Then we'll have a title icon, and for the title icon, we're going to have a color, and again the text decoration, and the title icon is going to be over here, display button. So for here, let's have it as a color, and the color is going to be var, again main blue over here. Now once we set the color, then we would also want a text decoration, since this is a link and we just want to get rid of it. So let's say text decoration is going to be none, and again we need to use a important flag. And after that, we're going to have a title hover, and we're going to make sure that we don't see this default color. And notice here we have a link, so within a Bootstrap, as we're hovering over this link, we'll have this default blue color. So let's do a hover effect. Let's say that as we're hovering title icon, we're going to have a hover. However, in our case, we're just going to set this hover to a blue, so the same thing that we had before, but in our case we're just going to change the opacity. So color, and let's say var over here, main blue, and within a opacity we're just going to set it as 0.6. So if we're going to go back over here, you see that this icon is getting a little bit more transparent because we set the opacity of 0.6 over here. Now once we have worked with the title and the icons, let's work with an actual header. So let's go back over here and let's add a few more properties over here. Well, first of all, I would want to add a clip path, and I would make sure that I'm getting actually the shape. So you notice over here in my finished project, I have the shape that's pointing over here in the center. So how we would do this? Well, for this, we're going to use a clip path property, and here we're going to have a value of polygon. So if we're using a polygon, now we can use it as a drawing machine. So here we just need to pass the values, and then after that it's going to spit out a shape that we created. Now for the polygon, we would need to use the values, and the values are going to be the corners that we're creating. So over here, we're just placing the points in the map over here. So if this is going to be 0, 0, so x is 0 and y is 0, this is going to be already where the x is 100 and the y is still 0. Then this point is going to be y is 0 and x is 100. I'm sorry, y is 100 and the x is 100. And over here, this point is going to be where the x again is 0 and the y is 100. So this would be the y axis, and this is going to be the x-axis. So first things first, you notice over here that we would want this point to stay the same as it was. This point is also going to be the same as it was. The only point we're going to be adding over here is this middle one. So let's go ahead and let's do this. So here, like I said, we're going to start with x being 0, meaning this is going to be the point where the x is going to be 0. Then the y is also going to be 0. Now the second point is going to be 100, and this is going to be 1. So the x value is going to be 100, and the y value is going to be 0. So this would be this point over here. So if you want to change anything in between, you would need to set another point over here. Now in my case, I'm just going to keep on moving, and I'm going to say that next value that I'm going to be interested is going to be 100% with a x value over here, and 95% of a y value. So again, let me save this over here, and now I'm creating a point somewhere over here. So the x value is still 100, however the y value is going to be somewhere over here on the top. Now, once I have set the side value, now I would want the middle value. Now, for the middle value, I'm going to say that X is going to be 50 and Y is going to be 100% over here. So what I'm saying is over here at 50% of X, make sure that the Y value is actually 100%. So in this case, if the Y value is 95%, then over here, the Y value is going to be 100%. And now I need just last point, and the last point is going to be 0 for the X value and 95% over here for the Y value. So once we save it, notice over here, this is the result that we got over here. So as you noticed, I have 95, I have 95, and at 50%, I actually have 100% of Y. And obviously with a polygon, we can add as many points as we would want. And we're going to use it a few more times throughout the project. So if you didn't get it right away, don't worry, we're going to come back to this. But just letting you know that all we're doing over here is we're just setting up the points. And if you want to look at it, how it works, maybe in more detail, just start playing around with these values. And we can set it up as little points as we would want, or we can set it as many points as we want. And the last thing that I would want is to work with an animation, because if you noticed over here in the finished project, like I said before, we are having the animation where we first are zooming in over here on image, and we're also translating a little bit to the left. Now, what's happening and how we are doing this? So here, we're going to go to the height max, and we're going to add a few more properties that have to do with the animation. Now, before we do that, let's actually add a keyframes, and this is going to be the way how we're creating the animation. So we need this keyword of keyframes, and then we need to write the animation name. So in my case, I'm going to write that animation is going to be zoom. Now, what would be the difference between transition that we had between these social icons and between the animation? Now, you see, whenever you're working with a transition, you're going from one state to another one. So you're going from 100 to 0 or 0 to 100. There's no in between. However, once we're going to start working with animation, you're going to see that with animation, we can work with different properties. We can change it any way we would want. We're not limited to only values of 100 or 0 to 100. So within the zoom, which is the name of our animation, first we're going to write the percent. And over here, I'm going to say what would be the percent. So here I'm writing what are going to be my values at 0%. So here we're going to use a transform property that has a value of scale. So scale is just saying how big is the actual item. And since we're going to be adding this animation over here to this class of item max, I'm just going to say the scale of 1. So this is very easy. This doesn't change the value over here of this header. It just leaves it the way it is. So this would be the scale of 1. However, in a 50%, I would want to change the scale. I would want to say transform, and now I would want to scale it, and I would want to scale it 1.2 times bigger than it is actually. And as you notice over here, we're getting this middle value. So later on, we're going to create another 100%, which would be exactly if we would go from 0 to 100 with a transition. But with animation, we can insert whatever values we want. Now I'm just going to insert the 50%, but you can easily add 25%, let's say 75%, 10%. You're not limited to any kind of values. I just choose these values because they're just going to make a little bit more sense since they're going to be round values. And here I'm going to say that scale is going to be back to 1. So at 0 points, I'm going to start with scale of 1. Then at 50%, I'm going to scale it to 1.2. And then at 100%, I'm going to go back to 1. And over here, I'm going to add another property. And another property is going to be translate. And I'm just going to move the image a little bit to a left. So I'm going to say negative 5%. However, since I'm going to be doing these changes, I also want to make sure that for the header, I have the overflow hidden property value. And this is going to make sure that the image is moving, not the header itself. Now, once we have set these values, now we need to go back and write where we would want to use this animation. So here, let's say a animation name. So this is going to be the first property that we need to use. So animation name, and the animation name obviously is going to be zoom because this is the animation that we created. It would not make sense to use a different name for the animation. Now after that, we have the animation duration. So in this case, we can say, well, how long the the animation is going to take place. And let's just set it to 20 seconds, just so we can see that how the animation takes place. Now, once I save it, notice over here, my animation starts playing. However, I still have two properties that I can use. Now, the first one is going to be the delay. And I just want to make sure that animation doesn't start playing right away. So we can set the animation delay, let's say 5 seconds over here. So again, we're going to save it. Then we're going to wait 5 seconds, and only then the animation is going to start playing. And then last property for the animation we're going to use is animation iteration count. So how many times the animation is going to be running. Now, iteration count, we can have a value of 5, 3, 2, whatever number we would want, but I'm just going to say infinite. So for the header, this animation is going to be infinitely playing. So if I'm going to go back and to my recording, if I'm just going to refresh, we can hide the Google developer tools. You can see that we wait 5 seconds, and now my animation starts playing. I'm starting to zoom in over here, and also my image is moving to the left. And since I have this overflow of hidden, you notice over here my image is not moving outside of the header. It actually stays within the header. And notice over here our clip path, where we had 0 for X, 0 for Y. This would be 100 for X, and Y would be 0. Then this would be already, X would be 100, but 95 for the Y. You see over here how I lift it up a little bit, and then I set it equal over here to 100 of Y and 50 of X. And then I went back over here. And again, later on, we're going to be using a little bit different shapes, so we're going to be covering this one more time. And if you would want a different shape, now you know how to make a different shape. And once we are done with a CSS for header, now we can move on to our next section. The next section we're going to be making is going to be the skills section. And first things first, in the skills section, we're also going to set up a section title that we're going to be reusing throughout the project. So first, let's create the title, and then we're going to work on an actual skills section. So first things first, in the index.html, we're going to have a skills section, and also we can have a comment right away. And let's say we're here, end of skills, and within the skills, we would need first to have a section element. Now this section element is going to have skills class and also class of padding top bottom 5, and we're also going to have an ID of skills. The reason for this ID is, again, we would want to target with a nav bar. So like I said, first let's create a section title. Now here again, let's uncomment it. I'm sorry, commented one more time. So end of section title, and within the section title comment, we're going to have a row. Now before we actually place the row, we also would want to place a container. So let's start over here with a section where we have a container, and within the container we're going to place the section title. So let me just go back over here, let me cut them out and paste it over here, because we would want to place everything within the container, and here we're going to start with a row. Now within a row, we're going to have a class of margin bottom, and the margin bottom is going to be 5. So make sure that there's going to be some margin in the bottom. Then we'll have a class of column, and this column is going to have also a display of flex. So this is going to be the FLEXBOX parent container. We're going to have a flex of wrap. So make sure that whenever we're going to get to the smaller screen size, this is going to be wrapping. Then we'll have a text uppercase. So we're going to make sure that the whole text for our title is going to be uppercase, and justify content, and let's have it center. So we would always want it in the center. Now within this div, we're going to have a heading 1 with a class of font weight bold. So font weight, let's set it equal to bold, and also I would want to align it in the center. Now why I would want to align it in the center, because with a CSS I'm going to make this second one, so the second heading 1 is going to be bigger with this background. So I want to make sure that this guy is always going to be in the center. So this is the reason for align self center. And I can do this because the parent container is the FLEXBOX parent container. So I can align it, each and every individual item, with a align self center over here if I would want. And also I would want to have a margin left and right 1. So just a little bit of margin in between. And here we're going to write Y choose, And then, like I said, the second one is going to be another heading 1 over here. So this heading 1 is going to have a section, title, and special. So this is going to be the class that we're again going to be styling. And this is going to be for a background and the color that we were creating. So here, let's have another margin left and right 1. And let's just write that this is going to be a car dealer over here. Once we open up with an emmet, notice over here, now we have Y choose, and over here, this is going to be the car dealer. So like I said, once we're done with an HTML, now let's go to a main CSS. Let's go all the way up to where is the body over here. Let's create a section title, and let's just add a rule that we would want for a section title. And for the section title, it's going to be very easy. We're going to have section title, and we just want to work with the class that we had it as a special. So here, let's target the class of section titles special. Here, let's have it as a background. Now we're going to set a background again of the color. And if you notice over here, we can just make a color, and the color is going to be a transparent blue. So notice over here, the transparent blue color. Now let's set it for a section title. We're going to say over here that this is going to be transparent blue. Once we save it, and once we go down over here, now you can see that we have a background. After the background, we also would want to have a different color. So we'll have a color. Now this is going to be the main white. So we're going to set it equal to main white. Then we're going to add a little bit of padding over here. We're going to say 0.5 REMs and 2 REMs left and right. So 0.5 is going to be for top, bottom, and left and right is going to be 2. Once we again save it, now sure enough, this is going to be our car dealer. Now once we have added a padding, I noticed over here that the second text is not in the center. So let me go back over here and let me have a look of why this heading 1 is not justifying in the center. The reason for that is that it's not sitting in this FLEXBOX parent container. So let me move it up over here. Let me save it. And now we have actually our second heading sitting exactly in the center. And the reason for this is, like I said before, that we created this column as a FLEXBOX parent container, which has a class of dflex, and then this would be the flex wrap. So once we get to the smaller screen, this is going to be wrapping. And then with this class, we're setting it in the center over here. Let's go back to the main CSS. Let's add a last property, which is going to be, again, a clip path. So here, again, we're going to do a clip path property. Again, we're going to have a polygon value, and we're going to start over here with a different values. So again, we're going to go over that X would be 0 and Y would be 0. So in our case, we want to change it a little bit. We want to set it over here as 10%. And the reason for this, you notice over here. So we're setting up a clip path starting from 10%. Then we're going to go 100% for a X value. Y is going to be 0. But then we're going to go back over here. And we're going to make sure that X value is going to be 90 since we're using 10 over here. But Y value is going to be 100. So again, what we're doing, we're just cutting out from the main div whatever path or whatever clip we would want over here. So let's go back over here. Let's say 0 going to be for the Y value because it's all the way on the top. Then 100 is going to be all the way to the right hand side, and 0 is going to be for the Y. Now in this case, 90 is going to be for the X because we want somewhere over here, but Y value is already at that point 100%. Then the last one again is going to be 0 for a X and 100% for the Y. So let's save it and let's just check it out what we have for our title. And sure enough, our clip path has worked over here. So once we have set it up, our clip path and our section title, now we can go and work on our skills section. Now that a section title is complete, then we're going to have a skill. So here in the skills section, we're going to have 4 skills, and this is going to be all brands, free support, caring, and affordable. And for this, we're going to create each and every individual skill, and then we're just going to copy and paste it. So here, let's have it after a section title. Let's create another row. So still within this container. Now I would want to create another row, and this is going to be the skills section row. And within a row, we're going to have a single skill. So single skill, just so it is easier for us to copy and paste it. Then we can copy this guy over here and say that this would be equal to end of single skill. And within the skill, we're going to start with a column. And we're going to say that starting from a small screen, this is going to be spanning 6 columns over here. So there's going to be 2 column layout starting from a small screen. Then once it gets to the large screen, we're going to have a 4 column layout. So therefore, we're going to set this equal to 3. So column, large, and 3. And then we're going to set the text in the center, and we're going to add some margin, top, bottom over here, 3. Now first, we'll have our icon. So let's set it as AA, so link. And over here, the link is going to have skills icon. Now this is going to be the class that we're going to use for styling ourselves. Then we'll have some padding all around, so padding 2. And we'll have a bootstrap class of rounded circle. So in this case, what's happening is we're going to have first our icon, then we're going to have some padding all around it, and then we're going to make sure that a background padding is shaped as a circle. So notice over here, this would be the padding, and since we are having the class of rounded circle, this is why the icon background is going to be a round shape. Then within the link, we'll place a font awesome icon, so FAS, FA, and let's set it equal to car. And also let's add a class that we're getting from the font awesome, which is going to be FA fixed. And why we're adding this FA fixed? Well, you see, the reason is that all the icons have a different shape. However, we'd still want them to look the same way after we're adding a padding. So we would want some icon to be bigger. So for this, we're going to make sure that all of them are fixed width, so all of them are the same. Now, once the icon is finished within the link, then we'll have a heading 6. The heading 6 is going to have a class of text uppercase. Also, it's going to have a class of font weight bold. So font weight bold. And then we'll have the last one, which is going to be margin top bottom is equal to 3. And the text is going to be all brands over here. And then we'll have a div of underline. So we're going to create the underline, and we're not going to be able to see it in the HTML. So skills underline. This is going to be the class for our div, but again, within our HTML, we're not going to be able to see this for now. We're actually going to style it in the CSS. And last but not least, we're going to have a paragraph with classes of width of 75. So we don't want the text spanning more than 75%. We also would want it always in the center. So we're going to use a MX auto class, and let's add some color of text muted. So the text is going to be gray, and let's say lorem like 10 words over here. Once we save it, this is going to be our first skill. So now we can just grab the skill and copy and paste it 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. And now we just need to change the values. So if the first one was all brands, the second one is going to be free support. So let me just delete this. Free support. Also, I would want to change the font awesome icon, which is going to change from a car to comments. Then we'll have a people carry. So this is going to be the caring section. So here, this is going to be the skills of caring. Now the value is going to be people carry. So people, and let's set it equal to carry. And the last one is not going to be all brands. It's actually going to be affordable. So affordable. And for the affordable, we'll have a wallet icon. So here, let's write a wallet, and let's just make sure that there's space in between. So once we save it, we should have a all brands, free support, caring, and affordable. Now, once the HTML is set, let's go to main CSS and let's right away style it. Again, I'm going to go to the bottom of where we finished working with a header, and let's write over here skills. Now within the skills, first we're going to target skills icon. Let's go skills icon, and for the icon, we're going to have font size of 3 rems. So bigger icon, color, and we're going to set the color equal to a yellow. So var a main yellow over here. Now once we check it out over here, this is going to be our skills. Now after the main yellow, we're going to have a background of gray. So let me go back over here. Let's say that where's the background, and in this case we're going to set it to color main gray over here. Once we save it, now you can see that I have this gray background. And again, remember the class of padding that we added for the font awesome icon and rounded circle. So this is how we're getting this type of look. Then once the skills icon is set, then let's have a little bit of hover effect. And for this, we're going to have a skills icon. And since this is going to be the link, I just want to make sure that I'm not going back to this default, where you can see this is going to be the default a Bootstrap color. So in this case, let's have it as a skills icon hover. And for the hover, we'll have, again, the same main yellow. So color var main yellow over here. We'll save this, and sure enough, now everything is working. Even as I'm hovering, nothing is changing. And last, let's do a skills underline, the one that we don't see right now in our HTML. So underline. And for the underline, we're going to have a width of 4 rems. So we're going to make this underline width of 4 rems. Height, we're going to set it as 0.3 rems. So 0.3. And then let's do a background. And once we set the background, we're actually going to be able to see it. So var and main blue. So let's just save it to main blue. And over here now we should be able to see the underline. So this would be the underline. Like I said, width would be 4 rems. Height would be 0.3 rems. And then we'll have a margin. Now for the margin, we'll just want to set it in the center. So left and right should be set to auto. And this way we're going to have it in the center. And top and bottom, we're going to set it to 1. So margin, 1 rem top bottom, and auto just to place it in the center. And once we save this CSS, we are done with a skills section. And now we're ready to move on to our next item. So we're here, if we're going to go to the bigger screen where we have opened up in the browser, this is going to be our skills section, where starting from the large screen, we're going to have 4-column layout. And once we're going to go to the smaller screen, this is going to be 2-column layout. Once we're going to go to the small screen, this is going to be a 1-column layout. The next element we're going to be creating for the project is going to be preloader. So you notice over here, once the page is loading, there's going to be a GIF showing, so the users would understand that the page is still loading. Now for this, we're going to go to the index.html. Remember, on the top of a nav bar, the first comments we're going to create it, and now we're going to place our preloader. So let's have a preloader class. So preloader, this is going to be for the div. Then we're going to have a display of flex because we would want to place it in the center. Then we'll have a justify content center. So this is going to place it in a center horizontally. And then we'll have align items, and also center. So this is going to place it in the center vertically. And within a preloader, we would want an image. And for the image, let's just have a image. Look for the image. And within the image, we're going to have a preloader G. And here we're going to say that this should be just preloader. This is going to be the alternative. Now, as you can see over here, now we have our preloader spinning over here. And for now, we just see the justify content in the center because, again, the actual preloader doesn't have the height yet. So if we're going to go back to the main CSS, right after section title, we'll have a comment for a preloader. And here we're going to add some CSS rules. And the first one, we would want to target preloader. And then within a preloader, we would want to set the position to fixed. So position. And position fixed is going to make sure that this element is not within a flow of the document. So now this is going to be position fixed. So now we cannot see anything. However, we can make sure that the position also is going to be spanning all across the screen. So if we set top to 0, then we're just going to copy these 4. And here we're going to say bottom. Then after the bottom, we're going to have a left. And over here, this is going to be right. So 4 values over here. And if we're going to set them all to 0, once we save it, still nothing is changing. However, we're getting somewhere. And now we would want to use a background. For the background, we're going to have a white background. So var main white over here. Let's save it. Now we're going to getting a background color. And last but not least, we should have a Z index. And we're going to make sure that this is sitting on top of the page. You see over here, now this is sitting on the top of the page with a Z index, and there's nothing we can do. However, we will need to use a JavaScript to hide this once the page loads. But before we can go to JavaScript, let's just create a class that we're going to attach later on. So here we're going to write hide preloader, and this is going to be the class that we're going to be using in JavaScript. So in the hide preloader class, we're just going to say display, and we're going to set it equal to none. And over here, we're going to have a exclamation mark and important. So I'm going to make sure that this for sure executes. Then once the HTML and CSS is done, now we have left with a script.js, and in the script.js, we would want to target a window object, and we would want to attach a event listener for a load event. So we want to make sure that this event only fires once the images, the scripts, and everything has been loaded. So let's first target a window object. Then we're going to add an event listener, and we're going to add a load event. And load event for the window object is going to happen once the images and scripts have been loaded. Since we're using the ES6, we can have a arrow function over here. And for our callback function, since there are no parameters, we can just have empty parentheses over here. And then we're going to use the arrow function. Now, again, since the arrow function is just going to have one line, we don't need to use any kind of curly braces. So here we can just write it the way it is. So first, let's target a document. Now for the document, we would want to use a query selector, and we would want to target a preloader. So here there would be quotation marks, preloader. So now we're targeting the preloader, and now we would want to add the class. Remember the class that we created with a hide preloader. So let's have a class list, then let's do add. And now once the window load event has been fired, we would want to add this class to a preloader. So hide preloader. Once I save it over here, once the page loads, my preloader actually hides over here. Now again, in order to see it a little bit better, since this is a local connection, obviously the page is going to be loading really fast, but we can still go over here and just make the loading time a little bit smaller so we can see it a little bit better. If we're going to go to, again, performance, we're going to find where we at with a slow 3G. And once we refresh the page, see over here we had our preloader. Now, like I said, later on, once we're going to be adding more items to our project, we're going to be able to see in our local connection our preloader better. But the point of it is, if you have somewhere a user who is using a very slow connection, then we have a preloader who makes sure that they don't leave the page because they understand that page is still loaded. The next section that we're going to be creating is going to be our inventory section, where we're going to have the cards with the cars that we have. And over here, these would be the buttons that would represent what kind of cars we have. So over here, let's say that this is going to be the button that's going to display all the cars. And then this would be just American. And over here, the last one would be a German car. So let's go back to the index.html. Let's find where we finished with a skills, and right underneath the skills, let's create a section that's going to have a comment. And over here in the comment, we're going to write that this is going to be inventory section. Inventory section. Now, obviously, again, we need to create a comment that's going to represent the end of inventory section. So here, let's say end of inventory section. Let's just copy and paste this over here, and maybe we can just delete this inventory section, end of. Then within the inventory section, we're going to have a section. Now the section element is going to have class of inventory, and also we're going to have a padding top bottom 5. So let's have a py5, and also we would want to add an ID with a inventory name. And again, the reason for that is once we're going to be clicking the nav bar, we would want to scroll down to where is the inventory section. Now within a section, we're going to first place a container. Within the container, we're going to have a section title. So we're going to start with a section title. Now we're not going to have a comment right now because we can just go back up and find where is the section title and just copy and paste it. So if I'm going to scroll down over here, this would be the header. Then after the skills, you see over here, we have our section title. So we can just grab the section title, go down where we are working right now, copy and paste it. And only thing we need to do over here is we just need to change the actual value for a title. So this would be our, and we're going to write over here, inventory. So once we save it, sure enough, right now we have our title with our inventory value. After that, we're going to have our button group. So let's check it out. Where is the section title ending? And here we're going to create another row with a class of margin bottom 5. So we're going to make sure that there's a margin in the bottom. Then within the row, we're going to have a column 10. So we're going to make sure that this always is spanning 10 columns. Now, since we want to place it in the center, again, we're going to use a margin left and right auto. Then once we're going to get to a medium screen, we also would want to have it spanning 12 columns. So we're going to say column medium 12. And then let's add a FLEXBOX parent classes, because we would want to style it as a FLEXBOX. So for a column, we're going to have a deflex. So we're going to set it as a FLEXBOX parent container. And over here, let's say justify content. And we're just going to place it in the end. So we're going to say justify content end. Now within the div, we're going to have 3 buttons. So first, let's create a button. Now within the button, we're going to have a class of btn, which is going to be for all the buttons. Then we would want to use the outline class. So outline, a secondary, button outline secondary. This is going to give this gray color over here. And then also let's do a text uppercase. So text uppercase, and we also would want a little bit of margin left and right. So we're going to have mx1 over here. And let's write over here all. So this is going to be all the cars. This is going to be the value that we're writing. And let's copy and paste this and add 2 more buttons. So 1, 2, and let's just change this value to American. And this is going to be German cars. So we're going to have 2 types of cars. And over here, this would be the button for all the cars. Now, once the button group has been completed, now let's check it out where it actually ends. So this would be the row for a button group. So let's add a comment. This is going to be the cars. So this would be the inventory we're going to be placing the cars. Again, we would need to start styling with a row. And within a row, we're going to create the single car. So let's say single car. So this is going to be the column that we're going to be styling. And later on, we're going to be copying and pasting. So this is the reason why we're adding this single car and end of single car. Now for a column, we're going to do the same thing where the column is going to be spanning 10 columns starting from a small screen. So we're going to have column 10, MX auto. Again, we're going to place it in the center. And then let's add a margin, top, bottom 3, starting from the small screen. And then let's change the column layout once we get to the bigger screen. So starting from a medium screen, we actually would want a 2-column layout. So here you can see that I'm writing column, medium 6. And then once we get to the large screen, we're actually going to have a column, large 4, meaning we're going to have a 3-column layout. So this is going to be 1 column for a single car. Now within a column, we're going to have a card. And the card is also going to have another class, which is going to be card. So this is again going to be for our styling later on in the CSS. The only Bootstrap class we're using over here is the card class, which sets up a Bootstrap card over here. You see over here these lines. This is the beginning and the end of the card. Now within the card, first we're going to have an image. The image is going to have a German car source. So we're going to have image, and we're going to look for car German 1. So let's find where is our car German 1 over here. And our first German car is also going to have some classes, because if you notice over here, now the image is sitting like this. Now we would want to place it on the top of the card, and for this we'll have a Bootstrap class of card img top. So now we're going to be placing in the top. We also would want to change a little bit of radius. So we're going to use a car img class that we're going to be styling later on ourselves. So now notice over here, this is the top of the card, and this is our actual car. Now within the card body, so after the image, let's create a card body. So card body, and let's create a div with an actual class of card body. So div card body class. Within the card body, we'll have few items over here. So the first one is going to be the info. Again, we're going to set it up as a FLEXBOX parent container where we'll have items on the left and items on the right. And then we're going to have over here a footer, which is also going to be set up as a parent container for FLEXBOX. We're always going to display the items this way. So let's go back over here in the card body, and let's create first the car info. So car info div, and like I said, this div is going to be FLEXBOX div. So we're going to have a d flex class, then we're going to have class of justify content between. So we're going to make sure that the items within a FLEXBOX are pushed as far away from each other as possible. So let's write over here first flex child, just so we're keeping a count of what is happening. So this would be the first flex child, and over here let's write second flex child. Now our first flex child is going to be car text. Now within the car text, we're going to have a car maker and a car model. So div car text. So again, this is our div that we are creating ourselves and our class. So we're going to be styling that class text uppercase. Now within an uppercase, we're going to place our two heading 6s. So heading 6 is going to be font weight bold. So class of font weight bold, and the text is going to be car maker over here, car maker. And next one is, like I said, another heading 6. Only in this case, we're just going to get rid of a card bold. We do not need it anymore. And once we have deleted the font weight bold, check it out over here. So this is going to be our car maker, and this is also our car maker. So let's write over here that this would be a model instead. So let's save it as a model. Now this would be car maker and a model. Now let's do a price, which is going to be our second child. So let's go down under the car text and let's create car value. So here, let's say that this is going to be a heading 5 with a class of car value. Now within a car value, we also would want to align it in the center. And the reason for that is, since this is a FLEXBOX, you'll notice over here that this item with these two headings is actually going to be bigger the item that we're creating. So we're going to have an align self center. So in this case, the actual price is going to be aligned in the center. And I also would want a little bit of padding top bottom. We'll set it to 2, and a little bit of padding left and right. We're going to set it equal to 3. Now within a heading 5, we're going to have a $sign, and then once we have the $sign, we're going to have a span with a class of car price over here. So let's write car price. Let me just make sure over here, maybe delete this, so now my emmet is going to be working. And then let's write over here 10,000, and then we're going to write the actual $sign. So 10,000 over here. Let me get back my emmet, and once I have my 10,000, let's write over here that this is going to be the $sign. So once I save it, sure enough, this is going to be my price and car maker and model. Now right outside a card body, so if this was a end of card body, end of card body, I would want to create a card footer. So let's create a div with a class of card footer, and let's again do a FLEXBOX container. So let's first have text capitalize, and once we have the text capitalized, we also want deflex. So this is going to set up as a FLEXBOX, and justify content between. So this is going to make sure that the items again are as far as possible from each other. And here we're going to create a paragraphs, and within the paragraph we're going to have font awesome and then some text. So the first paragraph is going to have some span. So within the span we're going to place the font awesome, which is going to be FAS and FA car. So first we're going to place our font awesome car icon, and then let's write some text. So here we're going to write a car type, and since this is a FLEXBOX, we can just copy and paste this line 3 times over here, and let's write different names and different font awesome icons over here. So the name for the second one is going to be the transmission. I'm going to set it up over here to transmission. Then the last one is going to be the mileage. I'm going to set up this one to 50, and over here let's change these values. So this is going to be a gas pump over here, pump. And for the second value, we actually would want to use a cogs. So we're going to save it over here, and now you can see that we have 3 values. Now once I've created a single car, now I would want to copy and paste this 5 more times, because we'll have 6 total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're just going to change some values over here. So instead of a car German 1, we're going to have a American and we're going to set it equal to American, let's say over here 3. Then for the previous value, we're going to have a German, and we're going to set it equal German to 3. Then one before is going to be not German, but this is going to be American 2. So let's just delete this, American, and this is going to be equal to 2. And over here, this one we would set a German as 2. And then the one right after the first one is actually going to be American 1. So the way we're working over here is we're going to have some images. And if you notice that the image names are going to be car American 1, car American 2, and 3. And then we have German 1, 2, 3 over here. So since we have 6 of them, I just would want to have one of each. So one is German, then we have American, German, American, and German and American. Now once we have set up the HTML, we can go to main CSS and style our inventory section. So here again, let's create a comment, inventory. Now within the inventory, first let's target the whole section. So inventory section. Now within the section, we would want different background. So var, and let's have it as a main gray background over here. So let's set the background for the whole section gray. After that, we would want to work with the card, and I would just want to change these default styles where you see over here for the card, we have these rounded edges from the Bootstrap. So let's target a card. For this, we had a class of card over here, and let's do a border radius of 0. But again, we need to use a flag of important. And the reason for this is because we are overwriting a values from a Bootstrap. Now after that, we have a little bit of issue where you notice over here, the image still has these rounded borders, but the card does not. So let me target the image. Again, we created a class for that. So car img, and over here, let's do border left. And now we would need a border top left radius and border right radius. So top left radius, we're going to set it to equal to 0. And this guy is going to be top right radius also is going to be set equal to 0. We save it, and now I can see that everything is working fine, and we have the sharp edges. Then last thing that I would want to change is this car value over here, and I would want to work with a clip path, so to make some kind of shape out of this. So here, let's target a car value. Now within the card value, first we're going to have a background. Now the background is going to be main blue, so var main blue. Once we have changed the background, then we would want to change the color. So color, and this time this is going to be a white color. So main white color. And then let's have a clip path again. So far we should already remember that we had a clip path. Then we're going to choose a polygon. And for the polygon, again, we're going to change some properties around. So we would want to start with 15% X and 0 for the Y value. So we're going to start somewhere over here. So this is what we're going to be creating the shape with. So 15% from a left. So 15% is going to be somewhere over here. Then we're going to have an 85% for the X value and 0 for the Y value. So we're going to end up somewhere over here. So the X value is going to be 85, but the Y value is still going to be 0. Then we're going to have a value of 100 and 100. So this is going to be somewhere over here. So this is going to be 100 and 100. And then we're going to have a 0 of 100. So again, the X would be 100 and the Y is going to be 100 over here. So let's save it over here. Notice this was the 15% that we started with an X. Then the Y was still 0. Then 85 was for the X and the Y was still again 0. Then we switched to 100 and 100. So 100 X direction, 100 Y direction. And then we'll go back over here where the X is 0 and the Y is 100%. Now, once we have set up a clip path, I would want to do a hover effect. So let's go back over here and let's say that car value hover. So as I'm hovering, what should happen? And over here, let's just copy and paste this and let's just change these values around. So let's copy and paste the clip path over here and let's maybe move it up a little bit so it's actually within setting our rule. And clip path, we're going to change it to 0. So now it's going to start from 0 to 0. Then it's going to go to 100 and 0. So we're basically going to make a square again. And then once we save it, as I'm hovering, notice over here, how it goes back to a normal square. Now, I would want this change to happen over time. So we already learned before about a transition property. Now, within the transition property, we can actually use it as a shorthand. So first, we're going to write what property name we would want to affect. So in this case, I'm just going to say all properties. So this is valid. Then we're going to say how long this is going to take. So let's say 1 second. And then over here, the last one is going to be how the transition should take place. So in our case, I'm just going to write a linear. Now, again, this is the same thing that we were writing with a social icons before. Remember when we were working with a social icons? Let me just find them somewhere. Now we had a nav toggler, nav icon. Remember when we had transition property, duration, and function. So this is just a shorthand where we can just write the property name and we can have the value of all. So all the properties affected, it should take 1 second and this should be linear. And once we have set up a transition, you notice over here that we are done with a section and we are ready to move on to our next section. So once I go back over here, once I save it, and let's check it out. We have a 3-column layout on a large screen. However, once I go to the smaller screen, I'm going to have a 2-column layout. And then once I go to a extra small screen, I'm going to have a 1-column layout. The next section we're going to be creating is going to be a question section. We're going to have a section with a background, and then we'll have 2 columns. Now, in each column, we're going to have a title, then some text, and over here, this is going to be the font awesome with a little bit of transition effect. So let's go ahead to index.html. Let's create a section with a class of question. Now, also would want a padding top bottom 5, and let's do an ID with a question. So let's say over here that this is going to be the ID for the section. Now within the div, we're going to have first, as always, a container. Within the container, we're going to have a row. And since this title section is not going to have a title, we're right away going to have the row that's going to be representative of our question section. So within a row, first we're going to have a single question. So single question over here. And let's copy and paste it over here and say that this would be the next question. So single question, let's say first, and then single question second over here. So once we have these 2 values, then within the first question, we're going to have a div with a column 2 of max. So column 10 and MX auto over here. And also right away want a margin top bottom 2. So this is going to be for the smaller screens, just so there's some space in between them. And also let's have it starting from a medium screen. We're going to have a 2-column layout over here. Now, since this is going to be a FLEXBOX, we need to create it as a FLEXBOX parent container. So this would be a class of displayFlex, justify, content, and all over here, let's say between. So this is the classes that we would want to add. Now also we would want to add a class of question gray. So this is just going to be for the styling. Now let's add a padding all around of 4. So this would be our first column that we're going to be creating. Now within the column, since this is a FLEXBOX, we need to first place an icon. So this would be our first child. So first FLEXBOX child. And let's copy and paste this. And let's say that there's going to be a second one. And again, these comments are not completely necessary. However, I think, in my opinion, while you're working, it helps to notice which is the FLEXBOX child. So it is easier to understand what's happening once you're working with a FLEXBOX property. So the first child is going to be the link with a class of question icon. This is going to be the class that we're going to be styling. So question icon. Now after that, we're going to have a margin right 3. So this is going to add a margin right to a icon. And now within the icon, first we're going to have hashtag for a href, and then we'll have a I, which is going to stand for font awesome, and we're going to do a search. So FAS search over here. And let's do again a FA fixed width. So even though the icons are going to be different, they're actually going to be same width because we added the class from the font awesome. So since we have a second FLEXBOX child, now let's create a question text div. So div with a class of question text, and here we're gonna want to use a width. So let's say over here that this is going to be a width of 75. So no matter of the screen size, this text is always going to be 70% wide. And then within the div, we're going to have first a heading 4 with a classes of question title that we're going to be styling later. Then we'll have a text capitalize over here. And also we would want a font weight bold. So this is going to be for a title. We're going to have font weight bold. And over here, we're going to say, are you looking for, over here, a car? And then a question mark. And then once this is set up for a heading 4, then after that, we're going to have a paragraph with a question info. So here we're going to say question info class. This is going to be the class that we're going to be creating for the text. And over here within the text, we're going to have just some text of, let's say, 10 words over here. Once we open up the emmet, now you can see that this would be our font awesome icon with the search. Are you looking for a car as with the text? And then over here, this would be the paragraph. And obviously, since we have two single questions, so this would be single question second, this would be the first one. We can just grab it, copy and paste it, and then we're going to have our second item. So single question second. Let's save it. Let's grab whatever we had up to that point. And over here after the comment, let's just copy and paste it. And now we have two of them. Now, obviously, for the second one, we would want to change some values around. So let's say over here, this is going to be the $sign. So here we're going to be asking whether the person wants to sell the car. And then after we're done with a different font awesome icon, we also would want to change the value. And over here, instead of are you looking for a car, we're just going to write that this is going to be a do you want, and let's say to sell a car over here, and a question mark. And this would be a setup for the HTML. So now after that, we'll have a CSS for a question. So let's go to a CSS. Let's add a comment. Let's say over here question. And within the question, we're going to have a class of question. So we're going to be targeting the class of question. Then we'll have a background. And the background is going to be URL. And again, we're going to be looking for an image over here. So quotation marks, 2 dots. Now we're looking for the images folder. And the reason for this is we need to leave a CSS folder. Then we're going to go to the main folder. And then we're going to find where is the images. Now within the images, we're going to have a question background over here. So let's find the question BCG. And over here, we can just write it shorthand. The previous properties that we were writing with a background center or background position, we can just write the values over here. We can just say that this is going to be center / cover. So this should be a background size. First one was background position, then background size. Over here, we're going to say that this is going to be fixed and no repeat. And again, we're not inventing anything new over here. What we're saying is that we just would want to use this the shorthand way. Now, whenever we're writing a shorthand, we need to remember that background position needs to come first. Then we have the cover. And after the cover, the actual order is irrelevant. And again, if we're going to go back and if we're going to find where we had a background properties, see over here, we didn't change anything. However, instead of writing out the full property names, we can just use a CSS shorthand way. And in this way, we just can speed up our development. Now, after that, we'll have two classes that we would want to target as a background. And here, I'm going to have to go back to index.html and actually fix something. You notice over here, I had question of gray. I had a class of question gray. Now over here, I'm going to change it to question yellow because we're going to use this to change a background. So let's target the class of question, and let's say gray. And for the gray, we're going to have a background. And for the background, we're going to have RGBA values again. And in this case, this is going to be 79. Then we'll have a 109. And then we'll have a 122 and 0.75 over here. Let's save it. And sure enough, this is going to be the background that we're getting for question gray. So let me just copy and paste this over here. And let me go back. And let's say that this is going to be the yellow one. So the first one was gray. The second one is yellow. Now here, we're just going to change the actual color value. So this is going to be 227, then 181 and 5. And over here again, let's do a 75% of opacity. So sure enough, now we have these two backgrounds. After that, let's work with an icon. So question icon. This was the class that we attached to the icon. Font size, let's have it as a 4 rems. Then we're going to have a color of main blue, the color that we're using for the whole text. So let's target again with var main blue over here. Let's save it. And after that, we'll have a transition. So as we're hovering, we would want to use a little bit of transition where we are lifting up the icon. So first, let's do a transition. So let's do the other way. Let's right away set up how the transition is going to take place. And then we're going to write what should actually happen. So in this case, I just use a transition ease and out. So a little bit of different way of transitioning taking place. And now let's target a hover effect. So question hover. So as I'm hovering over the question icon, what should happen? So icon, and we'll have a hover effect. Let me go back over here. Let me have a colon and hover. And over here, we're going to have a transform, and let's do a translate. So in this case, we're just going to translate Y instead of when we were using with animation, where we were using translate X. In this case, we're just going to lift it up. And if we're placing a negative value, the actual icon is going to be lifting up as we're hovering. And if the value is going to be positive, it's going to be going down. So in this case, let's just say 10% lift up. So as I'm hovering, sure enough, you can see that icon is hovering. And also you notice the default color. So let's also do a color since this is a link. Let's have it as a color var and the main blue. So in this case, we don't have these default values from a Bootstrap. So sure enough, as I'm hovering, you can see that transition is taking place over 0.5 seconds, how we set it up. Then once we're done with a icon, the last one is going to be the info. So let me go back over here. Question, info. And for the info, it's going to be actually very simple. We're just going to have a main white. So this text, I would just want a color of main white. So color var and main white over here. And once we save the CSS, we have everything working. So let's go to our browser where we have open up our recording that we're currently working on. And sure enough, you can see over here we have these two questions. One is going to be, are you looking for a car? And do you want to sell the car? And over here, this would be the icon that would be lifting up. If I'm going to go to the smaller screen, I'm going to have a single column layout. However, once I'm going to get to the medium, you can see over here that we have a 2-column layout. And once we're done with this section, we're ready to move on and start working on our next section. Our next section is going to be featured cars section, where we're going to have a image on the one hand side. And as you can see with a CSS, as I'm hovering over the image, we're going to be zooming in the image. And also we're going to have our little font awesome icon, which is going to be our search button. And then on the left hand side, we're going to have the models. And as we're hovering over the model, we're going to have a little bit of a transition. And over here, the opacity is also going to change. So let's go to index.html and let's start working on our section. So if this was the end of question section, now let's create a featured car section. So again, the comments first, featured, then copy and paste over here, end of featured. And now within the featured, we would want to create a section. Then we'll have a class of featured. Then also we're going to have a class of padding top, bottom 5. And let's have an ID of featured. So again, 3 things that we're going to be adding to each and every section would be a class, then padding top, bottom 5, and over here the ID also. Now within the section, we're going to have container first. So let's have a container. Now within a container, we'll have a section title. So let's look for section title. Now within the first section title, let's just copy and paste it. Let's go down where we were working and let's copy and paste the section title. Now here we're going to change the values. We're not going to say why choose. Here we're going to have a featured and let's say over here cars. So this is going to be the title. Now after the title, I would want to create a row. So here, let's say a row, and within the row, I'm going to have two columns. Now the first column is going to be the info. So here we're going to have a featured info, and the second one is going to be featured image. So img. So there's going to be two columns. Now the first column is going to be column 10. So starting from the small screen, this is going to be 10 columns wide. Now also right away going to place it in the center, and don't forget the dot over here. So 10 columns wide, mx auto, so placed in the center. Then let's have, starting from the large screen, column large 6. So starting from a large screen, this is going to be 2-column layout. And let's have a class that we're going to be used for styling. So featured info over here. And also I would want a margin top bottom 3. So this is going to be for the smaller screen, so there's some distance in between them. So let's open up with an emmet, and now we have our first column. Now obviously we don't see anything yet because we need to place some info inside. Now before I place anything inside, I'm just going to copy and paste this, and this is going to be my second column over here. Now here I'm just going to change the image because this is going to be the value for the class that we're going to be styling. Then within the div, let's first work with an image, and let's say over here that this is going to be image container over here, and let's have a image actually container. So this would be the div that we're creating, image container. And we're going to use this later on for the styling because we're going to be doing that zoom effect. So we would need the container. Then within the container, we're going to have the image. So let's have the image with a class of image fluid. And you'll see in a second what the class is doing. And over here, let's have another class of featured photo. So this is, again, we're going to be using in our own CSS. Now, once I open up with an image, now I would need to select the image. Now, the image that I'm going to be selecting is going to be featured. So once I save it over here, now you can see that I have a car. Now, if I'm going to remove the Bootstrap class that we had before, check it out over here. You can see that image does not fit in the container. So therefore, we're using this image fluid class that places the image exactly in the image, and it's not overflowing. And after that, the last thing for the image photo, I would want to create a icon. So again, I'm going to use a link. Now this is going to be have a class of featured link class. And over here, we're going to have a font awesome. So hashtag, and within a link, we're going to have FAS and FA search over here. Now this is going to be our font awesome icon that we're going to be styling later on in the CSS. We're going to make sure as we're hovering, then the icon is actually going to be in the center, and we're going to be zooming in the image. So this would be it for the first column, for the image column. Now second, let's work with a items, with a featured info column, and place it within this div, not with a second one where we had a featured image over here. Now here we're going to say like this. We're going to say that there's going to be single item. So I'm going to call this single item. Now, when I'm saying single item, I mean this whole thing. See over here, I'll have a font awesome icon. I'll have some kind of name. Then this would be a model. And this whole thing is going to be my single item over here. So this is going to be placed within the second, or in our case, actually, the first column over here. Now here, I'm going to say that there's going to be a div with a class of featured item. So this is going to be my class. Then I'm also going to have some margin in between them, so top bottom 3. Then as you notice over here, this is display flex, so we need to make sure that we have a deflex. So deflex, so this is going to be right now a FLEXBOX parent container. Then we'll have a padding, let's say 2 all around. Text is going to be capitalized over here. And then also we're going to have align items baseline. Because if you notice over here, we have font awesome icon, then we'll have some text. So since I want them to be aligned the same way, I'm just going to use align items and baseline. So this is going to be the Bootstrap class that's going to do this. And then also the last thing, we would want flex wrap, just in case we get to the smaller screens and we want to make sure that it's wrapping nicely. Now within our first div, let's place the items. So this is going to be the span. Within the span, we're going to have also a class. So let's say class of featured icon, featured icon. And for the icon, we would want to use a also margin. So let's say over here, icon and margin right. So this is only for the icon, so there would be a little bit of space in between the icon and the text. And within icon, we're going to have our font awesome, FAS, and let's say in this case, we're going to say FA car. So this is going to be our font awesome icon. So check it out over here. This is our font awesome. Now still within this div, now we would want the name, which is going to be a heading 5, and font weight bold. So font weight bold, and also I would want a margin X, so all left and right, of 1. And let's write over here Mercedes, and let's copy and paste this. And over here, this is just going to be a heading 5. This is going to be the model. In our case, we're just going to use a MX1. So only thing I would want is just this margin left and right. And let's write over here that this would be a new model. So new model over here. We'll save it. And now we have set up our first item. Now in our case, let's have like, I don't know, 3-4 items over here. So let's go back to the single item and let's just copy and paste this. So if I know that my single item ends over here, what I would want is just create a end comment. So end of single item over here, and let's just copy and paste it over here. So maybe let's do 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we have 5 of them. The moment I save it over here, now you can see that I have Mercedes, new model, Mercedes, new model. Now I'm not gonna change any values because these are just gonna be the default values. And let's check it out what we have on the medium screen over here. So once it starts over here, you notice that I have all my items, but my actual image is sitting a little bit above. And I would actually want to change that. And since we remember that all the rows in the Bootstrap are going to be parent containers, see over here, this row is going to be parent container as a FLEXBOX, we can go down to the image and again do a align self center. So align self and center. In this case, what's going to happen is that this image is now going to be even over here with these items. Now I still need to fix over here this icon, and the moment I'm going to place the icon with a position absolute within my image, then you'll notice a difference over here. So let's go ahead and let's actually start working on this section in the CSS. So let's just switch gears over here. Let's go to main CSS. This was the last of question. So over here, let's have a featured section. So featured, and let's start targeting the section. So first, let's target a featured section. And over here, let's have add as a background. Background is going to be main gray over here. Let's save it. And now we have the main gray background. Now after that, we're going to work with featured item. So featured item over here. Now within the item, we would want a background of white. So background var and main white. Then after we have set up a background, now let's do a border radius. Border radius. Now the border radius is going to be 0.5 REMs. So there we're going to have a little bit of round edges over here. Now let's set them up opacity of 0.5. So transparency is going to be 0.5. And only let's change a opacity as we're hovering. And over here, let's have it as a cursor pointer. So as we're hovering, there's going to be cursor pointer. And let's set up right away transition. I know that I'm going to be using a hover effect. So let's say transition, and let's do a shorthand. So all and 1 second, and again, ease in and out. So again, we don't need to write a long way. We can just write a short way. And in this case, we're going to have a featured item hover. So as we're hovering, what should happen? And this is the case where we're using the all. So obviously we can write as many properties as we want. So here, first one is going to be opacity of 1. So as I'm hovering, you can see that the opacity is going to be changing and it's going to become 1. And also I would want to scale it a little bit. So let's have it as a transform scale, and let's have it as 1.5 over here. So it's just going to get a little bit bigger. So as you notice over here, as I'm hovering, notice how it gets bigger. So we're using the transform of scale. Then after we have a icon, let's actually style the icon. So you see over here, we still have the icon and we would want to style it. So featured icon over here. And we'll have a font size of 1.5 REMs. So the font size is going to be bigger for all of them. Then we're going to have a color. Let's have a color of yellow. So var main yellow over here. Now we also would want to change a cursor pointer. So as we're hovering, we're going to have a cursor pointer. And then let's also do a transition because I would want to change the color as I'm hovering. So let's do the same thing. Let's have a transition of 0.5 seconds all and ease in and out over here. So let's save it. And as you can see over here, nothing is happening yet. We haven't set up a hover effect. However, the transition is set up over here. So featured icon, hover, and what is going to be our hover effect? We're just going to change the color. So color var, and in this case, we're just going to change it to the main blue. So main blue over here. Save it, and now the color is going to be changing, and this is going to be happening within 0.5 seconds over here. Now, once we have set up a featured icon hover, now I would want to work over here with this image. I would want to set up this icon in the middle of the image, and also I would want to make a hover effect. So as I'm hovering, I'm going to be zooming in over here. So how do we do this? So here, let's have the container. So remember, we had a parent container for the image. We had image container, and then we had the actual image. So let's go and style this container, and let's say it over here like this. So image container. So this was the class that we created. Now we're targeting the class. Background, let's set it first to a blue. So let's have a var, and let's use a main blue. So main blue color over here. Save it over here. You notice we cannot see anything. We can only see in the bottom where we have our font awesome icon. Then we'll have a position relative, and I'm just going to cover these two properties with their values once we get to the down to the CSS. So once we're going to be covering it, I'm going to come back and explain why we're adding them. But for now, let's just place them both over here, the position relative and overflow hidden. Then I would want to work with a featured photo over here. So as I'm hovering, I'm going to say featured photo. So over here, I haven't created a class. So instead of featured icon, I'm going to have a photo. And this was the class that was attached to each and every image. So let's add another transition over here. Let's say all, 1 second, ease in and out. So as I'm hovering, something is going to happen to the image, and it's going to happen within 1 second. Then here, let's do a transformation for the image. So as I'm hovering over the container, I would want something to happen. So image container will have a image container hover. So as I'm hovering over this container, I would want the featured photo to scale, so to get bigger. And also I would want to change the opacity for the image, so I can actually see this blue color over here. So featured photo, something should happen over here. So I'm selecting a hover effect for the image container, and then I'm applying the properties and the values for the featured photo. Now the first one is going to be, like I said, making it bigger, transform scale 1 point, let's say 1.3 over here, and check it out. So as I'm hovering, you see that image is going to be getting bigger. Now the key over here is if I'm going to go up, and notice over here this overflow hidden. If I'm going to comment this out, now the image is going to get bigger, but the container with an overflow hidden is working as a stopper. So it stops from expanding outside a boundaries of a column over here in this case. So therefore we're setting up as a overflow hidden. So we're going to leave it like the way it is. So now you can see that it's only spanning over here in the bottom. And we'll fix this in a second. However, I also would want to change a transformation. So let's say over here we're going to say that we'll have an opacity for the image. So I would want to see this blue background somehow. So I'm going to say over here opacity, and I'm going to say opacity of 0.5. So again, as I'm hovering over the container, I would want to change the opacity for the photo. So let's save this over here, and notice now I'm going to be seeing this blue background because I also changed this opacity. So now we can see this blue background as we're hovering over the image. And now the last thing is going to be link. So featured, not icon. We're going to say link over here. So this little guy over here. And we're going to do the same thing as we have been doing before. We're all going to take the actual item outside of the normal flow over here. And in this case, we're going to do it with a position. And the position is going to be set to absolute. Now the key over here is, since we had this position relative, this container is going to be working as a parent container right now for this position absolute, because once we do the position absolute, you can see that the icon is gone. Now we will going to use this container, the image container, as a reference point. So we're going to be setting up this icon referencing the container that we have. So in this case, we have a top value, and let's set the top value of 50% over here. So notice over here, now this is going to be my icon over here. So 50% from the image container, I'm placing it 50% from the top. Then let's do not top, let's do also left. And as you can see over here, now we're working in placing it in center. Now it's not exactly in the center because it also has its own values. So let's have a font size of 3 rems. See over here, now the icon got really big, but it's definitely not in the center. So we need to do a little bit of trick of transform, and we just need to translate it. And we need to translate it 50% X direction and 50% of Y direction. So we need to make sure that we are translating it 50% of its own width and of its own height. So in this case, we can actually place it in the center over here. So now it's sitting in the center. Then let's change a color value. So the color is going to be a black. So var main black over here. And then once we have the color, then let's do also the opacity. And let's also do a transition. Because again, as I'm hovering, I would want to change the color. However, I would want to happen over time. So first, let's say the opacity of 0 over here. So you can see that I'm going to hide the actual icon that's sitting within my image container. And then I'll have a transition. So again, the same old good transition where we're going to have a all. So for all the properties, we're going to be changing 1 second and ease in and out. So this is going to be my value. And then once the featured link is done, then let's do a hover effect. So featured link hover. And we're not going to be able to see it right now because we still need to set up something else. But I already know that I'm going to change the value to color. And in this case, we're going to say main white over here. And once we change it to the main white, again, we're not going to be able to do it right now. There's one thing that's left to do. And now the same way how we had the image container hover, we're going to do with a image container hover the featured link. So as we're hovering over the container, something should happen to the link. So let me copy and paste this. And let's change this one to featured photo, to featured link. And here, you already could guess it, that this is going to be opacity of 1. So if this was opacity of 0, as I'm hovering over the container, my opacity is going to be changing to 1. So let's go down over here and let's check it out. Notice over here, as I'm hovering, now my icon is showing. And as I'm hovering over the icon, my icon is turning white. And this is how we can set up our section of featured sections. So let's go to the bigger screen where we have in the browser, and let's check it out what we have. Notice over here, the image is actually sitting in the center, because if we have over here 5 items, they will going to be bigger size than the image. And since the row is a FLEXBOX parent container, we were able to do the align self in the center. And now this is going to be the image. And now we get this zoom effect over here. And now once we're done with this section, we're ready to move on to our next section. Now the last section we're going to be making is going to be the footer section. And over here, we're just going to have a footer section with some font awesome icons. And obviously within a footer section, we're going to have a background of black, and the font awesome icons are going to be yellow. So let's go to a index.html over here, and let's have it our footer. So let's have a footer comment. So footer, then we'll have a footer section. So here, let's have a footer element with a class of footer. We'll also right away have a margin top bottom 5 over here. Now within a footer, we're going to have a div with a class of footer icons. Within this div, we're going to have it as a FLEXBOX. So we'll set away right away a dFlex, which is going to be a class for FLEXBOX parent. And over here, let's have a justify, content, and around. So this is going to make sure that all the icons have enough space in between them and they are evenly spread out. So within our div, now let's place our font awesome icons. Here we'll have a link. Now the link is going to have a class of footer icon. Now, once we have a actual link, now we would want to work with an icon that's within a link. And let's do first a href, which is going to be where we would want this link to go. In our case, we're not going to be linking to social icons. So in our case, we're just going to leave it as a hashtag. Now, after that, let's have it as a FAB, which is going to stand for Facebook and for all the social icons. So FA Facebook over here. And once we save it, sure enough, in the bottom, we have our Facebook. And because we already set up a display of flex and justify content around, there's going to be even space all around the icons. And now let's just copy and paste it. We have 5 icons total. So in our case, we just need to copy and paste it 4 more times. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let's just change these values over here. Well, first I can just delete wherever I have the Facebook because they're not going to be all Facebook. I can just delete it over here. And once we have deleted them, then let's say over here that the second one is going to be Twitter. Then after that, we'll have another one that's going to be Instagram. After that, we're going to have a LinkedIn. So LinkedIn. And over here, we're going to have a Google Plus. So Google, and plus over here. Once we save it, sure enough, we have our 5 icons. And now we just need to go to a main CSS and style them. And in the main CSS, we're going to have 3 rules. So let's go to a main CSS all the way in the bottom, footer icons. And for the footer icons, we're going to have a footer. So we're going to be targeting a footer. Now for the footer, we'll first have a background. So the background is going to be main black, background var main black over here. Once we set up a background, we also would want to work with a font size for the icons. So let's go over here and let's say footer icon over here. And for the footer icon, the font size is going to be 1.5 rems. So the size is going to be bigger. Then we'll have a text decoration of none because we know that these are going to be the links. Color is going to be yellow. So color var main yellow over here. And after we have set it up, let's do a transition, whereas we're hovering, the color is actually changing to a blue. So here, let's do a footer icon hover. And as we're hovering, we would want to change the color. So the color is going to be var main blue over here. And once this is set up, and also let's go back over here and let's say transition. And transition is going to be all 1 second ease in and out over here. So as we're hovering. And last but not least, let's figure out why the padding is not working correctly. We're going to go back to index.html. See over here, we have a margin instead of padding. So let's create this as a padding. And now you can see that our footer is displaying exactly how we want. Now, once we're done with an HTML and CSS, let's start working in our JavaScript. And so far, as you can see in our JavaScript, we have 2 lines of code. But since we're going to be adding way more code, we need to start adding some kind of structure. Because while just putting everything line by line would be fine in small projects, as the project is going to get bigger, we're going to have to find things, we're going to have to fix things, and we're going to need to remember how things are structured. So for this, we're going to be using a reveal module pattern, and we're going to be setting up with immediately invoked function expressions. Now I understand that these are going to be a lot of big words. However, in this video, we're not going to doing any kind of coding, and we're just going to go over how we're going to structure our JavaScript file for the future videos. Well, first of all, we know that in JavaScript, once we make a function declaration, we also need to invoke the function. Because as you can see over here, just because I wrote a function that says hi, and in the console log there would be a hello, nothing is showing because I haven't invoked the function. So if I'm going to invoke the function and save over here, I'm going to have my hello. Now we also know that just like a function declaration, we also have a function expression where we assign a function to a variable. So this would be similar. I would need to invoke the function. So once I save it, then I'm going to have a hello, I'm John, because this was assigned to a variable. Now also in JavaScript, we have immediately invoked functions. Now, why the immediately invoked functions are really good? Because we don't need to invoke them separately. They invoke themselves, and variables are not in a global scope. So check it out over here. The syntax would be the same as we have it for a function declaration. However, what we're going to do is we're going to enclose the actual function in the parentheses, and we'll immediately going to invoke it. So if I'm going to go within a function body over here, and as you notice over here, I have a variable with a name of John, and then over here in the function body, I have also two console log statements. You notice over here that right away, even though I didn't invoke specifically anywhere else in the code the function, the console log statements run. However, I cannot access this variable with a name of John. So in this case, if I'm going to change it, and if I'm going to say that I would want to access the name, and if I'm just going to look at my console log, you notice over here, we're going to have nothing because we cannot access over here this variable of name. There is no variable of name over here. And the reason for it is because it is enclosed within this immediately invoked function. And once we have looked at a function declarations, function expressions, and immediately invoked functions, let's check it out how we're going to be creating our modules. So here we're going to have a variable, and the variable is going to have a name, and we're going to set this variable equal to immediately invoked function. So in this case, we are creating an IFI. So this would be immediately invoked function expression. And as you can see over here, we can have a private variable, and also over here we can have some functions. But what we're going to do is we're going to be choosing what we are returning, so we can use it actually outside of this function. So let me go up here and let me again just comment this out so it's not our way in the console, and let's see what we're getting back. So you see over here at the very end, I am returning an object. Now the object has a property of add count, and this is going to be equal to this function of add count, because as you can see over here, I'm going to have this private variable of counter, and then this function is going to add to the counter, and this function of show is going to show the counter. Now outside of our module, we're going to have the module that we created, and now since we're returning these properties with the values, and this is set equal to the function, you see over here this property is actually equal to a method. The value of this property is method. Now the method would be add count or show. So if I'm going to go up here, and if I'm just going to uncomment this, we're going to notice that we'll have 3 times the count. So we're going to have module add count, and then at the end, once we show it, you notice over here we have our variable. However, again, if I'm going to go over here, if I'm going to say that I would just want to console log a counter. So if I would, let's say, want to access it, notice over here, counter is not defined. So there's no way for us to reach this counter. So this allows us to create our private variables with our data, then work with that data within the module, and then at the end, just decide what we would want to do. Because we also are able to pass over here a parameter and an argument. And you'll notice as we're going through, so I'm not going to go through this right now. However, we have one more option where we can pass something inside here, work with it, and at the end just pass some kind of value back. Now, since we're going to be working with an ES6, let me show you how we're going to modify this to a ES6 standards. So you notice over here that I have const instead of var. So throughout this project, we're going to be using const, which comes with ES6. Now we're also going to use another keyword for the variables, which is going to be let, and we're going to take advantage of a arrow functions or fat arrow functions from the ES6. And with an arrow functions, if there is no parameter, so if there's no parameter for a function, we can just write a empty parenthesis, then we can skip a function keyword, and then over here this is just going to be our code block. We're also going to take advantage of the fact that in the ES6, if you have an object and the property name is exactly the same, which we had over here, you see we had property with a value of add count. So in this ES6 we can just skip it, and we can just keep on writing the other properties, because the JavaScript is going to understand that what we're referencing over here is this add count function. So this is going to be the value for this property, and the same way for this show, the value is going to be this function of show. So once we have talked about the theory, let's go ahead and let's start building with an ES6. Once we have looked at a theory behind creating a revealing module pattern, now let's create our first module. And we're going to have a variable. So we're going to use a const keyword to create a variable. And then the variable name is going to be create cars. So this is going to be our module. Now we're going to set this variable equal to a iffy to immediately invoke the function expression. So here we're going to start with a parentheses. Then since we're not going to be passing any parameters, we're going to have another set of empty parentheses. Then we're going to have a arrow function, so here, and then we're going to have the actual code block for the function body. Now after we have had our closing parentheses, we're also going to have our invoking parentheses over here, and then we're going to place a semicolon. So once I save it, and once we're going to go back over here, and if we'll just do a simple console log of hello, you can see over here that the function is going to run right away, so we can start placing our data. Now first, let's create a array here, const, and let's say that the cars is going to be the name of the variable. And for now, we're just going to set this array equal to an empty array over here. So this is going to be our data. This is going to be the all information that we're holding about the cars. So let's say over here, car data. Now once we have created a array, now I would want to create a class that's going to hold the information about each and every car. Now alternatively, we could have made over here an object, so each array item would be an object, and over here we would have a name, and then let's say over here we would set it equal to BMW. However, I don't find it useful, since there's going to be quite a few properties and quite a few values. So I'd rather first would want to create a class, and then I'm going to create a function that's every time we're going to run the function, we're going to instantiate the class. So let me just delete this. Let me go back over here to an empty array, but just I'm letting you know that you technically don't have to do what I'm going to be doing right now. You could just place a bunch of objects over here with an information. However, I'm going to show you what I think is going to be either easier way. So let's say over here that this is going to be the car class. So this is going to be the class that's going to instantiate each and every car. So over here, since this is going to be the ES6, we can just use a class syntax, and we're going to call this class a car. Now within this car, we're going to have a constructor. So every time we're going to be instantiating the class, we're going to call this constructor. Now over here within the constructor, we're going to have quite a few properties. So the first one is going to be the make. Then we're going to have the country of origin. Then we're going to have an image that's going to be displaying. Then also we would want a property named special, and this is going to be whether it's going to be special or not. Then we'll have a property of model, price over here, and type, and also transmission and gas. So transmission, and gas over here. Now once we have set a constructor, now I would need to set these parameters equal to their values. So in this case, I'm going to say this dot make is going to be equal to make. So for every instantiation, we're obviously going to have a different make. So for this, we're going to create this dot make is going to be equal to make. And then we just need to do the same thing with country, image, special, and model, and so forth. And so over here, we're going to say this dot country is going to be equal to a country parameter. Then we'll have a this dot image. This dot image is going to be equal again to a parameter that we're going to be passing. Then this dot special is going to be equal to a special, and then we'll have a model. So this dot model is going to be equal to a model. Then we'll have a this dot price. So this dot price is going to be equal to price, and then we'll have a type. So this dot type over here is going to be equal to type. Then last two is going to be this transmission. So this dot transmission is going to be equal to transmission, and then we'll have this dot gas is going to be equal to gas. If you're wondering why we have so many of them, if we're just going to go back to our finished project And if we scroll up over here, you can see that within our card we have an image, then this would be a maker, then we have a model, price, and type, and transmission, and gas. And this is the reason why there's so many properties over here. Now, in order to make my code a little bit more concise, so you can see everything that's happening, once I have created a class, over here I'm just going to minimize it. Now my code is still up here, obviously. However, I just made it smaller so we can see everything what we're doing in the same screen over here. And once we have created a car class, now I would want to make a function that's going to call this car class every time we're going to run the function. So here, let's call this a function that's going to create cars. So car creation a function over here. Now once we have the comments, and creation over here is obviously different. So once I fix my misspelling, let's create a function. So here, let's say function. The name of the function is going to be make car. And then over here again, we would want to pass these parameters. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm just going to set up the parameters, the same ones that we had for the class. Then within a function body, we're going to instantiate a class, and then we're going to push this class to this array. So every time we're going to run the function, we're going to add one more new object over here to this cars array. So first things first, let's create the parameters, and the parameters would be exactly the same that we had before. So we had a country, then we had image, then we had a special one, and then we had a model, and again after that was a price. After the price we had a type, and then we had a transmission over here. And after transmission, the last one was gas. So these are all the parameters that we're going to be passing in our function. Then within a function body, like I said, we're going to create a new instance of the class. So we're going to call this variable a car, and we're going to set it equal to a new car. Now once we instantiate the class, now I would want to grab these parameters over here that I passed in a function and place it in the car over here. So let's say over here make, and again country, and then again we're just going to be repeating all of them. Image, special. Once we have the special, then we'll have a model, price. After the price, there's going to be type, transmission, a gas is going to be the last one. So now once we have created the new instance of the class, I would want to push, or I would want to add this instance that I created over here to this my array over here. So let's say that we would want a cars. So we would want to get this array, and we're going to use a push method, and we're going to push the car that we created over here with the function. So one more thing that I would want to show you, that with a ES6, what if there's a case where you don't know what would be the image, or you don't know what type it is, but you know that there's going to be some kind of car? Well, since we're using the ES6, we can use something called default parameters. So as I'm going over here on the top, and once I'm defining my parameters, I can actually set them equal to a default parameter. So in my case, I know that, let's say I don't have the image for the car that we're going to be creating. So first things first, I can just create a image that I'm going to be setting over here. So I can just say image, and this is going to be my default image. So I can select the image that I picked as default, and I can just say over here JPEG. So what I'm doing is, if I'm not going to pass any value over here in the class, or whatever I'm calling the function, I'm going to pass from the function to a class this default parameter. Because let's say I'm going to call the function and I don't know the image. Now instead of showing no image, in this case what we're going to do is we're going to set a default parameter. So every time I don't specifically name my image, there's going to be a default thing with a rest of the parameters apart from make and country. So for the special one, by default, let's just set it over here to true. Then the model, we're going to set it equal by default to a new model over here, and we're going to place this in the parentheses. Then for the price, let's set it equal by default to a 10,000 over here. So this would be 10,000. The type is going to be automatic by default. So let's say over here, I'm sorry, not automatic, this is going to be transmission. The type is going to be by default sedan. Then the transmission by default is going to be automatic. And then over here for the gas, we're going to have a 50 miles. So the mileage by default would be 50 miles over here. And this is just going to make a little bit more sense once we're going to be calling the function, and then I'm going to show you how the default parameters work. But in a nutshell, if we want to use them, we would first need to place them whenever we are creating our parameters in the function. So once we have set up our make car function, that's going to instantiate the class and push it over here in the cars. Let me go outside this function and let me just call the function. So let's say over here that this would be a make car. So I'm calling the function. And since we're using the default parameters, I can just write first for the make. So let's say over here this is going to be a Chevy. And then just for the country, let's say that this is going to be American car. So American car. Now once I've called these two parameters, once I've inserted them over here in the function, you see over here, since I'm having these default parameters, that's all I have to do. Just to prove you that everything works, let's do a console log of cars over here in this case. So once I call it, notice over here, now within my cars array, I have the car, and check it out. Over here, once I open up this array, I have make is going to be Chevy, country is going to be American, image is going to be the default, special is going to be true. Now obviously I'm not limited just by placing these two parameters. If there's going to be value for parameter, the JavaScript is not going to use this default parameter. However, this creates my coding much more easier because I don't need to worry about some empty values that are not going to be showing up over here. I can always have some default values. So let's go ahead and let's actually call this function around, I think, like 11 times, and then place the values actually within the function, so more parameters than we have right now. So since I know that I'm going to be calling this function quite a few times, I'm actually going to create a function that's going to produce the cars. So over here I'm going to say a produce cars function, and over here let's write that this would be a function. Now the function name is going to be exactly the same, so produce cars over here. And within a produce cars function, I'm just going to call this function multiple times. I'm going to call this make car function, like I said, around 11 times. So let's say over here make car function. Now for now, let's not pass anything over here, but let's just call this function produce cars right outside over here. So let's write produce cars, and let's just invoke the function over here. So what I'm saying over here is I declared the function. Within the function body, we're going to call the make car function that we created before, and then I'm just going to invoke this produce cars over here. And again, this just makes it easier because then I can minimize this later, and you're going to be able to see everything what's happening on the screen, and it's just going to make way more sense. So like before, we're going to call our first one with just two parameters. I'm going to say over here that this is going to be Chevy, and this is going to be a American car. So once I save it, again, I should have the same exact result. Now, over here, I would need to console log it, otherwise we're not going to be able to see the array. So let's do console log cars. Let's save it, and now sure enough, I have my one car. And let's keep going, and let's start looking at how a default parameters would work in few other instances. So again, let's call a make car function. Now first is going to be a model. So let's say over here Mercedes over here. I'm sorry, first one would be the make, and we're just going to set it to Mercedes. The next one we're going to say that this is going to be a German car. Then after that, since I have the image right now, and if you'll notice over here in your file, you're going to have a image, and you see over here the German car. The first one is going to be actually the Mercedes. So since I have the image, I don't need to use the default one, so I can just write an image over here. So let me go back to the script. Let me minimize the sidebar. And over here, let's write what image we would be selecting. So this would be image. Then we'll say car, German, over here. And we're going to have it equal to JPEG. And then last, we're going to have a special. And we're just going to set this special true over here. Now, this is a little bit redundant because you notice over here, the special was set to true anyway. So we shouldn't have done it in theory. However, I'm just showing you that if we're going to be overriding, everything is still going to work. So in this case, you could have just omitted it because we have already default parameter special of true. However, in this case, let's just put it true and let's check it out what's going to happen. So again, once I save it, now I have two cars in my cars array. So let me just open it up and let's see what we have. Here we have a Mercedes. Country is going to be German. Then we'll have a German car over here. However, the mistake is I didn't have the value. So let me just add that this is going to be car number 1. And let's just say that this is going to be a German car. Yeah, well, let's leave the German the way it is over here. Once I open it up, check it out over here. Now this is going to be a German car.1. Then the special is going to be true. And like I said, since the default one was also true, it did not make much sense, but I just wanted to show you that if we write the value, we're just going to get the value that we're going to be writing over here, not a default one. And now let's just copy and paste a few times over here this function that we created, and let's just add a few other values. So let's say over here I would want to copy and paste it a second time, and then over here instead of German 1, we're going to have a image of German 2, and let's set a special one of false. And why we're creating this special parameter and why we keep adding the values. Well, you see over here down the page, we're going to have these values over here for a type and for the maker. And then once we're going to click the button, then this car is going to be showing. Now I don't want to have all my cars over here in this list. I just want to have, let's say over here, in this case, I have 5 of them. So what I'm doing over here is I'm just going to set the value for special true or false. So the ones that are going to be true are going to be showing down the page over here. And once I click it, I'm going to show the image of this car. However, the ones that are going to have a value for the property of special false, those ones are not going to be shown. So this was our second German car. Then we'll have our third one. And over here, we're going to change this to 3. Now, obviously, for now, all I'm doing is I'm just adding these values over here. And then later on, I'm just getting the default ones. However, if I'm going to go back over here, and if I'm going to say that the model is not going to be new model, but I already know that there is, let's say, some kind of model name. So let's just say over here, some model. So this is going to be my model. Again, once I save it, if I'm going to go back, now you can see that I have 4 cars over here. And if I'm going to go to a item number 4, check it out over here. The model is actually set to some model, not to a new model, which was by default. Then once we have done with a third German car, then we're going to have a 4th one and 5th one right away. So let me copy and paste this 2 times. Let's set this to German 4. And over here, this is going to be the 5th German car. And now let me show you how you can work with a values, with a default parameters over here, if you're omitting something. So let's say over here that I would figure out that I would want to have a different model over here. So this would be a different model. However, I wouldn't know the value of special. Now, if I'm just going to delete this on a car number 4, what's going to happen is it's going to place this value of other model where I have the special parameter over here. So it's not going to skip it. It's actually going to go one by one, and it's going to check, okay, the make is Mercedes, the country is German, the image is this one, and then the special is going to be set equal to this other model. Now to show you, let me run this, and let's check it out, the car over here, the car number 5, I believe. Check it out over here, the 4th one in an array, and see what we have over here. We have a special set equal to other model. Now obviously this is not what we would want, and in order to work with a default parameters, if we would just want to skip the parameter, and if we don't know the value, what we need to do is use the undefined. So once I place the undefined, then JavaScript is going to know that what we're doing is over here is we would want to get a default parameter, and then this value is going to be set obviously to a parameter that it references to. So be careful whenever you're working with a default parameters. Just if you're omitting parameter, make sure that there is no other parameter that's set down the line, because you can see over here this was easy. We obviously just set the first 2 ones, and then JavaScript knew that one by one it just needs to get the parameters. However, once you start introducing some kind of parameter that you're skipping, you need to use over here this undefined. And over here the last one is not just going to be some model. We're just going to get rid of a some model, but we're going to set a false for a special. So this would be car number 5. Now over here, let's call again this function a 5 more times. In this case, however, we're going to be calling with a American values. So let's say over here, make car. Now the model, again, we're just going to use a Chevy one. Then for a country, we're going to say American. And then over here, we're going to have American image. So we're going to say IMG, and car is going to be car, American. And then over here, we're going to write 1. So this would be value for the first image that we're going to have. And then over here, let's say that all of them are going to be the false. So in this section over here, we're basically just going to have a bunch of German models over here. We're not going to have any American models. So that therefore I'm setting this special to false. And in order to skip a little bit of time, I'm just going to save over here with these prices. However, if you would want, and if you want these parameters actually included, then obviously you can fill them out. But in my case, I'm just going to skip it over here. And only thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change these values over here for the images. So this is going to be number 2, this is going to be number 3, and this is going to be number 4 and number 5. Now, obviously, in a normal website, what's going to happen is you're going to have some kind of backend, whether this is going to be with PHP or something else, but you're obviously going to be getting your values from there. Now, I'm just showing you that we can create our data in JavaScript. However, in a normal case, this is not what we're going to be doing. So once we have called a function, once we have created our cars array, check it over here. Now we have 11 cars array. Now also, what I would want to do before I return the cars value, I would want to filter and just get a special cars. Like I said, I was looking for the cars that are special because I would want to have some kind of values over here. I want these 5 cars over here, and I would need to pick which ones I would want to use. So let me go back over here. Now, since I have the cars array, let's create a special cars array. So cars that have a property with a value of special cars true. So let's say over here that this is going to be special cars over here. And for the special cars, we're going to do a filtering method. So since this is an array, I can just filter this cars array that we created over here. Let me just close over here this function for just a second. So again, we just see everything better what's happening. So what I would want right now is I would just want to filter this cars array. I would want to filter and find all the cars that has a property special set to true. So here, let's say that this is going to be special cars, and this special cars is going to be equal to cars.filter. So now we're going to be getting back an array, and the filter is going to have a callback function. But again, since we can use a arrow functions, we can just omit the function keyword, and we can just say over here car, which is going to be the parameter. Now the car parameter refers to each and every car in this cars array over here. So I'm going to say car, so check the car, and then return only the car that has a car special set to true. And over here, again, we don't need to create a function body with a curly braces, since we're just going to write one line over here. So here I'm going to say car special and is equal to true. So only the cars that are going to have this property equal to true are going to be returned over here in this array. And in order to check this, let's do again a console log. And this time it didn't work. Let me get a console log, and just let's console log a special cars. So once I save it, let's check it out over here. See, now I have 3 cars, because what happened was, again, I used a filter method that is available in JavaScript. Now a filter method takes a callback function. Now within the callback function, since we have only parameter, we can just skip a parentheses. And also, since there is only one line that in the function body, we can omit a curly braces. So here now I have 3 cars that are special. Now maybe 3 cars is a little bit less than I would want. So let's just go back over here and let's just change the values for the German ones. So let's say over here that this is just going to be a default parameter, which is going to be set to true. And then over here, once we have the false one, maybe include one more American car. So let's over here again say that this is going to be a default parameter. So now I have 5 cars in the special car. So the last thing that I would want with my data module, I would want to return it, because obviously as I'm going to be working throughout this JavaScript file, I would want to use these values over here, because we would still need to work with them in order to have them in our web page. So last but not least, we're going to have a return object, And within an object, we're going to have two properties. Now, the first one is going to be all cars, and the second one is going to be the special cars. So let's write over here special cars. Now, since again we're using the ES6, we don't need to set the value equal to cars over here. Because we're using the same word, we can just omit this, and we can just return the property names over here like this, and then the JavaScript is going to know that we're referencing a special cars in our case, and over here we're referencing the cars. And basically it's the same as if I would write over here like this, that this would be equal to the cars, and the second one is going to be equal to the special cars. However, since we're using the ES6, we can just place a comma, and the program is going to know that we're returning the cars and the special cars. So in order to test this out, let's comment out these console logs that we had over here, and let's just have our module, and the module name was create cars. And again, in order to make this a little bit more easier to see, we're just going to create cars, and I'm going to minimize everything, and let's just check it out what we have. So for this, we would want a console log, and then let's have it as a create cars. So this was our module name, and over here let's find what we have within the module. Now first we would want a cars, and then we'll want a special cars. So let me save this over here. See, I'm getting back all the cars that I had, and copy and paste it, and let's write over here special cars over here, and sure enough now I have my special cars. And again, the reason why I'm getting these values, because at the end a module, I return an object with two properties over here, and since we're using the ES6, we could have just skipped showing the value for the properties, since the value name was exactly the same as we're using for the property. And now I can access these properties over here. And the good news is that there is no way for us to access this cars data or special cars data from the outside. So if I would do something like this over here, let's say that if I would just want to access the cars, and I'm going to delete this create cars, which is returning these two values over here. And if I'm just going to try to call them from the outside, access my module, see over here, cars is not defined. So there's no way for us to access it apart from returning whatever we would want the rest of the program to access. So once we have created a data, next one we're going to work on displaying the special cars. Now for the special cars, we're also going to create a separate module. So let me go up here and just minimize this. Just again, we can see that what we're doing, everything in one screen. So let me delete these console logs, because we already know that there's no way for us to access the data within a create cars module. And let's create a new module. Now the new module name is going to be display special cars. So let's say over here const display, and let's say special cars. Display special cars. Now again, we're going to have a same syntax. We're going to have a if, which is going to be with an arrow function. So we can just omit a function keyword over here. And then within the function body, this is where we're going to be creating the whole module. However, we would want to invoke it. And also we would want to use the create cars module that we created in the previous video. So how we would be able to use the create cars module? Well, we would pass the create cars as a parameter and as a argument. So in this case, right away, let's add it as a argument. So this is going to be the argument that we're passing, because in these parentheses we're invoking the if, and over here we're going to pass it as a parameter. So respecting a parameter with create cars, and then over here we're passing that parameter. And just to show you that we have right now the access to the data, let's create again a variable with special cars, and let's set it equal to create cars. And if you remember, we were returning a special cars, so it was the same name over here. So once I'm going to go over here within my display special cars module, and if again we're going to do a log with a special cars, we should have a array that we created before. So this was a special cars, and once we save it, sure enough over here you can see that we have 5 cars. Now obviously what I would want right now is I would want to work with this array and display it where I would want those special cars to be displayed. Now again, let me show you one more time where we're going to be doing this. You notice over here where we have the featured cars. So maybe it would make sense if I would rename everything with featured, but since we already that far along, we're just going to leave it with a display cars. So let me go to index.html. Let me find where is a featured cars, just so we can see what kind of variables we would need. So over here, as you notice, if we're going to be looking for a featured, so this would be the featured section, then over here within the featured info, this is where all the featured cars are displayed over here. So we have Mercedes new model, and this would be another Mercedes. So first we would want to target this featured info and actually make it empty. So let's go back to the script.js, and first things first, let's target this featured info. So here we can just comment out the special cars, just so we know that we have them in the console log. However, we're not going to be showing them every time in the console. Then let's target the info. So let's say over here, this is going to be the variable with a name of info, and this is going to be equal to a document query selector, and then the class name that we're going to be selecting is going to be featured info. So featured, and over here info. So now we're targeting the featured info, and then I would want to select a event listener, which would be DOM content loaded event listener, and I would want to apply this event listener to a document. So every time document loads, we're going to clean out whatever values we have over here, and we're going to insert them dynamically from the array that we have over here. So let's, first things first, let's create a comment. Let's say over here document loaded event over here. Now here let's target the whole document. Then let's add a event listener. So add event listener. Then this is going to be DOM content loaded. So every time the whole DOM content is going to be loaded, content loaded event listener. And then we're going to have a callback function. Now again, since we're using ES6, we can just omit a function keyword. Here we're going to be using a arrow function, and then within a function body, like I said, first we would target the info variable that we have over here. Since this is equal to featured info, we're just going to set the inner HTML equal to empty over here. So once I save it, if everything is correct, notice over here, all the values are gone. So now we would need to loop over this special cars. And then as I'm looping over these special cars array, I would want to display each and every item over here within this info. So first things first, let's create a variable that's going to hold everything when we are looping through. So let's say over here, this is going to be a let data. So keyword let, and the variable name is going to be data. This is going to be, for now, an empty variable. Then we're going to have a special cars. So we're going to be looping over the special cars, and we're going to be looping over with a for each method. Now, similarly, how filter, for each is going to take a callback function. Now, the callback function is going to accept parameter of item. Now, obviously, I'm just naming this parameter item. In general, it expects the parameter of item, which again references to each and every item in the array that you're looping over. So then we're going to say what we would want to happen to each and every item over here. And since there's going to be more lines over here, now we would need to use the curly braces for the arrow function. Then as I'm looping over this each and every item, I would want to add the value to the data. However, now I wouldn't just want to pass whatever values I'm getting back over here from each and every single item back to this data. I actually would want to use the HTML that we already have. You see over here for each and every single item. Now for this, I'm going to have to use a template literals because they were going to make our life much more easier over here. So the only thing we need to do over here is grab this one single item over here, how we had it in the actual HTML over here. Then let's just copy it over here. Then we're going to go back over here. And like I said, we're going to use a template literals over here, or template strings. And then within these backticks, we can just copy and paste. And now we have our HTML. So we don't need to change anything over here, apart from the fact of what type of values we're going to be passing over here. Now, what would be the information that we would want over here? Well, information that we would want to place over here is referencing each and every item over here. So in this case, if you know over here that this would be the make of Mercedes. Now what we're going to do over here, we're going to go back and we're going to say that from each and every item, I would want to get the make, because it's not going to be a Mercedes every time. So let's say over here, item make. And again, we are accessing this because we have the special cars. And again, just to show you that how we are doing everything, if you noticed over here, if this is the array that we're going to be looping over. Now, once I open up over here, obviously the value is going to be Chevy, Mercedes, Mercedes. Over here, this is going to be another Chevy. Now, in this case, what I'm going to be getting back is every time whatever the value is within the make. I also would want to have a model over here. So let me go over here and let's say that I would want to access the item and model over here. So now I'm accessing a model, and then I would want to access the item image. However, the item image we're going to be placing in a different attribute, which is going to be called data image. Because what's going to happen is, remember we had the icon. Now I wouldn't want to display the image as it is in the HTML. What we would want to do is, once we click over here on the image, we're going to get the image that the item has, and then it's going to be displayed over here in this picture. So this is the plan over here. Therefore, we're going to have another attribute, and we're going to call this attribute data image over here, and we're going to set it equal to whatever image we passed over here. So obviously this was the first one you see over here. This was default. Then we had German 1, German 2, and German 4 over here. So let's go back and let's say that this would be, again, a variable that we're going to be selecting from the item. And we're going to say over here, item and image. And you know what? Before we go any further along, let me go back over here where we had our create cars. And let me just change over here these makes that I had to BMW over here. Let me just go back. I deleted way too much. So BMW, and the same thing over here for these guys. So I'm just going to select them both because the pictures are going to be actually BMW. Now it's not really important, but let's just keep it so it is, and so it actually makes sense over here. So let me go down again where we were working, and let me minimize the create cars that we had before. And once we have set up this data, and now as we're looping over the array, we're going to be passing this to this data variable. Now once we have looped over the array, now I would want to use the actual variable and set it equal to info in inner HTML. So if we first cleared out the inner HTML of the info, now once we have looped over the array and passed the values to the data, we're going to do a info, then we're going to set it inner HTML, and we're going to set it equal to data over here. So once we save it, sure enough, what happens is, see over here, now we have 5 models. And now every time as I'm going and changing the values in my create cars, I'm going to have different values. So basically we created this dynamic feature of our website where we don't need to hard code everything in the index HTML. Now obviously it is nicer if we created the first time because it is easier as we're starting working with the JavaScript. The only thing we need to use is the template string, and we can just pass the whole thing over here without changing anything, without adding any classes or anything like that. Everything, as you can see over here, works, and everything is right away displayed with the CSS. However, these values depend on whatever array we have over here. So if we're going to go back to create cars, and if we're going to set different values for this list over here, for this array, we're going to get at different values. Now we're not done. We also would want to display, like I said, every time I'm clicking on a photo, I would want to get the photo not of the car that I have right now, the yellow one. I would want to actually get whatever the image is for the car. So let's still keep working over here within our display special cars, and then we're going to have another event listener. So if this one was a document loaded event listener over here, so once the document loads, then we're going to have a change image. So let's say over here, change image. Now here again, we're going to be targeting the info because this is going to be the parent container. And the reason for that is we added this list of 5 items right now. We added them dynamically So it's not going to be the case where I can go back and I can just say, you know what, I would want to select over here this featured icon, because what's happening over here, in theory, they don't exist. We can see them right now, but there's no way for us to go back over here and select these items right now, because we are not hard coding them. We're adding them dynamically. So we're going to have to use the event target for that. So here, what we're going to have is a event listener for change of image. So again, we're going to target info because it is a parent container, and this container actually still exists in our HTML. So let's go back over here to a JavaScript and let's work with this info. Then again, we're going to have another add event listener over here. And in this case, we're going to say that we're going to be listening for a click event over here. Now, as we're having a callback function, we also need to pass a event parameter over here. And again, since we're using a arrow function, then let's create a function body. And now let's check it out what we have over here as an event. So if I'm going to go back over here, and if I'm going to say event target, and let's actually console log it. So console log event target, and let's see what we have over here. So as we go over here, now you can see that we have the list. So as I'm clicking over here, it says over here the event is actually not defined. And the reason for that is that I did a misspelling over here. This is not an event. This needs to be written like this. Then once I click it over here, as you can see, it shows me the target where I'm clicking on. Because again, I'm going to repeat, but there is no way for us to use a document selector and select over here this little icon that we need. Because the plan over here is like this. I would want to click on the icon, and then we're going to see the image. Now again, if it would be hard-coded, we can just easily select the icon, attach a click event to it, and this is going to display the image. However, since we added this data dynamically, now we would need to use the event target and actually look for the event that's happening, and then we're going to work with the event to display the image. So first things first, as you can see, as I'm clicking on everything, it shows me what I'm clicking on. So what would be the target? Now our target over here is going to be this icon. However, since we have the link and the icon, now I would want to get the link, but as I'm going to be clicking every time, there's going to be the icon showing. So I would want to make sure that I'm just clicking the link, because the link is the one that has this item image over here. So how we would do this? We're going to set up a if, and we're going to say it like this. We're going to say if event target. Now, as we're having event target, we can also have a parent element. So in this case, we're going to have a parent element, and the parent element we're looking for is for the span element. And before probably I said link, I'm sorry. I'm looking for this span element over here, who is the parent element of this icon over here. So let's say that we have a parent element. Now I also would want to make sure that I'm getting the right parent element. And I know that this parent element has this featured icon over here. So let me write that this class list. So I'm making sure that the parent element contains this class. And in this case, I'm going to write class list contains. And then once I'm going to have contains, I would need to write what kind of class. So in our case, I'm going to say featured icon, because this is the class that I'm looking for. So if the element that I'm clicking on has a parent element of featured icon, let's just do very simple. Let's do a console log, and we're going to say, I don't know, great, or here like this. So let's have it great. Let's save it. Now, as I'm going to be going over, let me actually just uncomment this special cars. We don't need them anymore over here, because this is going to make our file a little bit better. And then as I'm going over, notice over here what I'm going to have in my console. So as I'm clicking over here, nothing happens. However, if I'm going to go to an icon, and if I'm actually going to click on icon, notice over here, I have this great now showing. So now I know that I'm clicking on icon. So everything is correct. Now, once I made sure that I'm clicking on icon, now I'd want to grab this data image attribute. And not just an attribute, I would want to grab this image value over here. So let me just delete this console log, since we know that this is correct. And let me actually target that image attribute. So in this case, we're going to have another variable, which is going to be image. And in this case, again, since I'm working with a event target, now I know that I'm selecting the correct target, So I made sure that the parent element would be with a class of featured icon. So I know this is going to be the span element. Then I know that the target parent element, I would want the data set. Now, how I can get this data image? Well, I can just have a data set, and then over here I would need to write what is the actual attribute name over here. So in this case, if I'm going to write data set, and then since the value over here is image, this is going to be transferred. So I can just say over here data image. So this is how I'm selecting a target parent element, data set attribute that it has, and over here this is how I'm getting the value. Now obviously if my value would be over here car, then I also would need to use a data set with a car over here. Now since in our case this was an image, now I know that the name is going to be image over here. Just make sure that you are not passing this dash over here, that you're passing over here this dot. Now once we have this image, only thing left to do is just get a photo that we have over here, the photo of this other element. So if I'm going to go back over here, and if we're going to scroll down, notice I have a featured JPEG, and the class over here is going to be featured photo. So I would want to target this featured photo and just change the source where it's getting at. So every time I'm going to click it, the source is going to change. So let's go back over here. Let's first actually see whether we're getting back the image and everything is correct. Once we save it, if I'm going to go back over here, and this was Chevy over here, you notice over here this was American one, then we're going to go to BMW. Now as we're clicking, this should be German one. So we know we're getting back the image, and again the reason for that is this data image attribute. So let me delete this console log, and now let me select the photo over here. So query selector. Now the class was a featured photo, so featured photo. So as I selected over here this class, as I targeted the item, now only thing left to do is just change the source element for the image. So I'm going to have a source. I'm going to set it equal to the image. And obviously image is the variable that I'm getting back from this icon over here. So once I save it over here, let's go to a browser where we can see it a little bit better. Once I refresh, you can see that this has been dynamically loaded right now. And as I click over here on a Chevy, since this is going to be the default one, I should have a default one. And unfortunately, nothing is showing. So let's check it out what in a JavaScript mistake I made. And you notice over here where I have a query selector, well, I didn't add the dot over here. And this is the reason why it wasn't working. So again, let's go back over here. Let's refresh. And now as I'm hovering over the Chevy, this should be working. And sure enough, now we have the default image that was there. However, if I'm going to be on the Mercedes, and if I'm going to click on the icon of Mercedes, something happened. And again, there's some kind of mistake over here. So let's go back over here where we created all the classes. And there's probably something to do with an image over here. So as I'm going back over here, you can see that I messed up on the German cars, but I didn't have the JPEG. I actually had a value of GEPEG. So this is something I would need to fix. So instead, let's have it as a JPEG, and over here also JPEG, and this guy also is going to be JPEG. And my apologies, but unfortunately, this is sometimes what happens. As you're working, there's going to be bugs in the code. So there's nothing I can do about it. So let me go back over here. Let me refresh. Hopefully you're not copying exactly everything how I wrote. And once I check it out the Mercedes, now I'm going to get the Mercedes. Then after that, I'm going to have a BMW. And again, this would be another BMW. And over here, this is going to be, again, the Chevy one. So this would be the Chevy car. So this is how we can add a special cars. So in the next video, we're going to look at how we can add all the cars over here. So how we can get all the data and display it on the page dynamically. Now, once we have looked at how we can add the cars dynamically in the featured cars section, the adding of cars in the inventory section should be very easy because we're going to be repeating a lot of the same steps. However, as you notice over here, there's obviously a little bit more information that we had in the previous section. So we're just going to have to be a little bit more careful as we're writing our JavaScript. So let's go back over here. You can see that in the JavaScript, we have our display cars. And in general, what we're going to do is we're going to make very, very similar module over here. Let me close this one also, just so again we see everything, how everything is happening, and we can see it a little bit better. So let me just minimize the create cars. Now we can see that we have two modules so far. The first one is going to be create cars, then we're displaying a special cars, and now we'd want to display all cars. So let's have again a variable. This is going to be display cars, so this is going to reference all the cars, and again we're going to do the same thing where we're going to have a ify, so instantly or immediately invoked function expression. Then we already know that we're going to be passing create cars as a argument, and then we're going to set it up also as a parameter. So this is going to be our arrow function, then this is going to be the function body, and over here we're going to say again that we would want to get create cars, because if you remember, whenever we were creating the cars, we created all cars and special cars. So here we used a special cars, and then within display cars we would want to use a all cars. So first things first, again, let's have it as const cars, and this is going to be equal to create cars, and let's set it equal to all cars. So instead of special cars, this is going to be all cars. And again, we can just check it out first whether everything is working fine. So once we have the cars, notice over here now these are going to be our 11 cars that we're going to be displaying in our inventory section over here. Now next thing, the same how we had with display special cars, we need to get a parent container where we're going to be displaying all this data. So in this case, I'm just going to delete the cars, and let's go back to index.html, and let's find where is the inventory. So again, let's find inventory, and within the inventory, the next value over here should be the section of inventory. And then let's go down over here. This would be a buttons that are we searching for, and this is going to be the row that's going to hold all the columns over here. And as you notice over here, so this would be the row. However, for the row, we would also need to add another value so we can actually target this element. Otherwise, it's not going to make sense. We're not going to be able to place it anywhere. So in here, before we actually do anything in the JavaScript, within the row, we would want to add another class, and this is going to be inventory container over here. So let's have it inventory container over here. Let's save it, and now we're going to know how to target this actually with the JavaScript, because otherwise it wouldn't be any kind of way how we can select this row. Now obviously we can target whole rows, but this is not going to make much sense. So in this case, we need to add this class over here just so we can select it later on within JavaScript. Like I said, we're going to go over here, and we're going to have the same thing like we had with an info, where we're going to have a variable. We're going to set it equal to inventory, and we're going to set it equal to document query selector. So we're going to select it with a query selector, and now the name is going to be exactly the same, inventory container over here. And then if we really want to, we can console log this, and we can just say inventory. Once we save it, sure enough over here, this is going to be the inventory container. If we look inside the container, this is going to be each and every car that we're going to be working with. And again, the idea is exactly the same how we had with the featured cars. We were just going to get a dynamic data, which we are getting back from create cars. So let me make a comment that this is going to be all cars over here. And this is going to be the container that holds the cars. So car container. Now, once we have the inventory car container, again, we would need to use a for each method to loop over the cars and display them once the document is loaded. So again, let's have a document loaded, a event listener. So content loaded event listener. And then again, we're going to be targeting a document. Then we're going to add a event listener once the DOM content has been loaded. So here, DOM content and loaded over here. So DOM content loaded. Once the DOM content has been loaded, then we would want our callback function. So in this case, again, we're going to be using a callback function, anonymous callback function. So since there's not going to be any parameters, we can just have the parentheses, and then this is going to be our callback. Now, first things first, similarly how we had with special items, let's get the inventory item that we had over here, and let's just empty the inventory item. So inventory inner HTML should be set over here to a empty one. Once we save it, as I'm scrolling up over here, you notice over here our inventory doesn't have anything. It just has the buttons, and that's all. So there's nothing that we have in the HTML. Then once the HTML has been set to an empty, then let's do the same thing that we had before. So we're going to have a output. So this would be the variable output, and we're going to set it equal to empty as well. However, we're going to be looping over the cars array that we had, and we're going to be looping over with a for each method. And in this case, instead of a item parameter, we're just going to call this parameter of car. And then we're going to say over here that as we're looping over this car array or cars array, we would want something to happen to each and every item. Now, what we would want to happen with this each and every item? Well, we're going to get, again, the output variable that we had over here. And again, we're going to do very similarly what we did before when we used a template string and then we added the HTML. And we're just going to grab some of the values from this car item. Now, when I say some of the values, it's going to be most of the values. So let me go back over here to index.html. Remember how we hard-coded all the values over here? So now I'm going to look for a single car, end of single car. We're just going to copy this one. Then we're going to go to script.js over here. These are going to be the template strings. We're going to pass it over here, our template string. And last thing, we're going to right away set it up outside this for each that we had. We're just going to say the same way how we had before, where inventory in our HTML is going to be equal to output. So we can just go back over here and we can just copy and paste inventory HTML. And over here, this is going to be equal to output. Now, obviously, we would need to change some values over here because this is not good enough for us right now. We would want to actually get a values that we were passing within this car over here. So first things first, we would want a car image. So let's find where is a card and then where we have the car image. So as you notice over here, so this is the image and this would be the source. Now over here for each and every car, we have a different car image. So again, we're going to use a $, then we're getting back the variable, and over here we're going to say car image. And again, this is going to be within each and every car. This is going to be the property, and now we're getting up the value. Now before that, I also would want to add a single car, and whenever I have a single car, I also would want to add another country property. So let's say over here that I would want to add a class of single car. So this is going to be with each and every column that I'm going to be adding. We're going to add this extra class, and also we're going to target a value of a country. So now we're setting up everything for the filter buttons that we're going to be creating in the next video. So in this case, remember when we had a property of country, so what would be the origin of the car? So in this case, we're going to target the car, and then we're going to be targeting a country property. And this we're placing within the column over here, within the column class, within the div. Now after we had car image and car country, let's find where is the car make. And this should be very similar to what we did in the last video over here. And car make. Then we're going to have a car model. So let's go back over here. And let's say that this is going to be car model. After that, we're going to have a car price, which is going to be in a span over here. So like I said, it's very similar to what we were doing in the previous video. It's just here we have a little bit more values. So we just need to spend a little bit more time looking for the values, and also we need to be careful of placing everything in correct spot. So here, if this was the car icon that we had, so this is going to be sedan, and in this case let's have a car type. So car type, then the next value is going to be the transmission. So what would be the transmission? Again, $, car and transmission, so trans. And then the last one over here is going to be the gas mileage. So let's target again a $, car, and let's have it as a gas over here. We'll save it over here, and now if everything works correctly, we should have all the items that we had in the array. So it looks like everything is working fine. So let me go back over here. Let me just refresh. For now, as you can see, I have 6 items because this is the hard-coded HTML that we had before. Now, once I refresh, now if everything is correct, this should be 11. And as you can go notice over here, the Chevy would be 11. Now, also, there is a little bit of a mistake. You see or notice over here, we have undefined, and then also we have a span over here. So those are the two things that we would need to fix. So let's go back over here. Let's notice first where we had the span. The span was with the price. So let me go back over here. Let me actually correct this. So now the span is correct. And then let's figure out why we have over here the undefined. Now, before we can do this, let's have again all the cars. Let's just see what is in the cars. So let's console log the cars. So log and cars. And this way we can understand whether the mistake was in our first module or it was on the very beginning when we were setting it up over here. Now over here you can see that we have a special true. Model is going to be true. So let's open up a 0 one. So let's see what we have. So we have a price, special, transmission, which should be automatic over here. And then we'll have a type as a sedan. Then let's go down over here and let's see why this is not showing. And the reason why it's not showing because I don't have the R over here. So again, let's save it. And now we can go back and everything should be working fine. So again, whenever you are going to be working with quite a few data, these are going to be the small issues that can pop up. But whenever we're working with a module, the key over here is that we can check it out. Where is the mistake? You see, we didn't have to go back over here and start looking for create cars because we know that this is a separate module. And if the mistake would be over here, I know that I would need to fix this within this module. However, if I would find that the mistake has happened when we defined the car instance, then I would know that I would need to go back to create cars module. So this helps us by creating a little bit more of a system with our code as we're working. And that way, as we're trying to find our mistakes, we can specifically separate the parts of our code. So once we're done with adding all the cars, the next one is going to be getting these buttons working. So whenever we're clicking, we're going to be hiding, let's say, German cars and showing only Americans. And then once we click the German, we're going to do the opposite. And once we click all, then we're going to show all cars. Now, before we create another module for our filtering functions, let's create a index HTML and let's have a look at what we would need to add in our index HTML. So you notice over here we had these three buttons. We had a button for all, button for American, and button for German. Well, there's a few things that we're going to have to add over here. And first thing is going to be to all of them, where we have a classes for the button. We would want to add another class over here for all the buttons. And we're going to add a class of filter btn. So this is going to be filtering button class. I also would want to add another attribute over here, and this is going to be data filter attribute. So again, select all of them. However, in this case, this is not going to be within the class. This is actually going to be outside because this is going to be a separate attribute. And in this case, we're going to call this attribute a data filter attribute. So data filter, and we're going to set it equal to. However, all the values for each and one of them is going to be different. So the first one is going to be data filter all. Then the second one is going to be American. And the third one is going to be German over here. So we'll have German. Now, obviously, these data filters reflect of what we have over here. So if you have different values within the button, then you should also make sure that this data filter represents to whatever you have within the button. Now, this is not going to make any difference in a JavaScript because we're going to be targeting this value. But if you have a Russian car over here and you're, let's say, changing the German one, it's not going to make sense. So let's go back over here to a script.js. Here we have the comments, and first things first, we will need to create a module. Now the module name is going to be cars and filter cars. So let's say over here, filter cars. And similarly how we had before, this is going to be an anonymous function. However, in this case, we're not passing any kind of parameters. So we can just have the empty parentheses over here. This is going to be a arrow function. And then later on, now we'd want to target within the function body. However, since it is immediately invoked function, we still need to have these parentheses over here. Now, once we're done setting up the immediately invoked function and our module, then we would first want to target a buttons that we just added a class to. So in this case, we're going to have a variable of const filter, and we can call this filter buttons. But in my case, I'm just going to skip it, and I'm just going to say this is going to be filter. Then we're going to be selecting all the filter buttons. However, since we want to select all of them, I'm going to have to use a query selector all. And in this case, since the class was filter button, we're going to have a dot filter btn. This is the class that we added right now to our buttons. Now, if we want to check it out, what we have, again, let's do a console log, and let's just call this filter, and let's see what we have. And as you can see over here, we have a node list, and these are going to be the 3 buttons. Now, even though this is a node list, we can still use a for each method that we had for arrays. So let's just loop over these buttons and let's do something with them. So let's call this filter for each. So as we're looping over, something should happen. Now, since this parameter is going to be button, I'm going to be referring to each and every button. Now, what I would want to happen as I'm looping over each and every button. Well, first I would want to add a event listener over here. So I'm going to say btn. So for each and every button, we would want to add a event listener, and we're going to be listening for a click event. So every time I'm going to click on one of the buttons, because I have selected all of them, something is going to happen, because I'm going to have a callback function that's going to run every time I click the button. So in this case, again, we're going to be looking for the event. And the reason why we would want event over here, because remember just a second ago how we added this data filter. So I would want to grab this value for the data filter for each and every button. And this is the reason why we were going to be passing a parameter of event again. So again, in this case, this was our parameter. Then we're going to have a arrow function, and then we're going to write what would be the actual function that we would want to run. So first things first, as always, let's get a value. Let's get the value that we had in the filter. So in this case, let's call this a value. Then we're going to have event target. Now, event target is going to reference each and every button that I'm pressing. So I'm going to have event target. Then if I want to get the attribute, my data filter attribute value, again, I'm going to use a data set. And then in this case, since we call this attribute data filter, we're going to use a filter over here. So now I'm getting back the value. So again, if we can just do a simple console log, and let's check it out the value, let's see what we have. So we have the buttons, and as you can see over here, I'm getting back the all, then I'm getting back the American, and this is going to get me back the German. So this is what we're going to be using in order to filter whatever the cars that we have over here. So let's delete this over here, and then let's check it out what we have with the cars. Remember when we were creating in the previous module with the display cars, remember when we created a car, we added this single car over here. You notice over here this class, remember how we added this single car class? This is what we're going to use as we're looping over them. Again, we can use a column one if we would want, but we had probably more than few column 10s in our document. So in this case, it would make more sense if we created a separate class. So let me close again a display class module just so we can see what we're doing over here. And let's actually select all these classes over here. Let's have it const single car. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to select document, query selector all, and let's get all these classes over here. So let's select them all. So let's say over here, single car. Now this is going to be the class that we're targeting. Now again, we can check it out what we have so far, and in this case, what's going to happen, again, we can do a console log, and let's do a single car over here. So single car, and let's see what we have over here so far. So what happens right now is the DOM has loaded. However, once I press the button, notice over here again, I'm getting back the node list. So this is going to be the node list of all the cars that we placed over here within the document dynamically once the page loaded over here. So once we have selected all the cars, that are in a document. Now let's loop over these cars and let's use the value that we had over here that we're getting from each and every button. And let's just filter the values in a node list depending or whether it fits whatever we're looking for or it doesn't. So once we click the button, we would want to loop over all the cars. So let's call this single car because this is going to be the node list we're getting back. Then we're going to say for each. So we're going to loop over this node list. Then again, the parameter is going to be the car because we're going to be referencing each and every card that we're getting back over here. And we're going to say what we would want to happen. So in this case, again, we're going to have a arrow function. So we can just skip over here with a function keyword, and we can just have a parentheses with our one parameter. And again, if we really would want to, we can just omit parentheses since this is a one parameter. Now, in some cases I do it, in some I don't. It really doesn't matter in our case. So we can just omit these parentheses and it's still gonna work correctly. And here we're gonna say like this. We're gonna say if the value is actually equal to all, which would be what case? It would be the case once we're pressing this whole button. Then I would wanna display all the cars. So in this case, I'm gonna say that if value, and the value in this case is gonna be this variable that holds a data filter value. And if I'm gonna say if this is gonna be equal to all, which again, it's only going to be equal once I'm pressing the all button, then I would want all the cars to be displayed block. So if this is an if statement, I'm going to say car, which is as I'm looping over all the cars. For each and every car, I'm going to say style, display, and we're going to set it equal to block over here. So as I'm looping over the array, all the cars, when I'm pressing this button, should be displayed. No questions asked. So this would be my first if statement. Then I'm going to have an else statement. So if the value is going to be different, then I would want something else to happen. And once we have created a else statement, now we need to figure out how we're going to be filtering with these American and German car buttons, because the all value was easy. So if we press the all button, then all the cars in our node list as we're looping over are going to have car display block over here. So as I press it, nothing is going to change because they're all going to be showing anyway. Okay, well, how are we going to do this? We notice over here we have a car and let's say American car and a German car. And if we also remember that in the previous display cars module that we were working on, we also not included a class for a single car. We also included this car, a country class. So we were targeting a property from the object that we have and the property's value of car country. And we added it as a class. So if we're looking over here, you notice over here this class, we had a single car class, and then we also have American class, then we have a German class. So each and every car has this class. Now the class value might change, however it does have the class. So now we know what we should target. So let's again minimize this. Now that I have minimized the rest of the modules, let's finish over here this else statement. So if the car value is not going to be all, if the button filter value is not going to be all, then we would want to do something else. And here we're going to write a ternary operator. So first things first, we're going to say if car, so the car that we are looping over, class list over here, contains, and now we're going to look for the value. So here we're going to say contains, and this is going to be equal to value. Now obviously the value is going to be changed as the button that we're changing. So what I'm saying, if the car that we're going to be looping over does not have this class that I have over here, the value of filter of American, if it does not have the class, then I would want to hide it. If it does have the class, then I would want to show it. Now with the ternary operator, we're just going to look what happens over here. And in this case, since I said not equal to, there's going to be two options. Either this is going to be true or this is going to be false. Either the car in the car list is not going to have the class or it will going to have a class. So in this case, if I'm going to say if it does not have the class, then I'm going to say car. So each and every car that does not have this class, the display is going to be equal to none, because this would be the first case scenario, because I set it over here not equal to. If this would be equal to, then obviously this would be the other way around. And then I'm going to say or. So if this car in the node list over here has this class, so car style, and over here we're going to say display, and we're just going to say display block. So two options. Either this car in the node list has the class of, let's say, American, then this is going to be displayed. However, if it does have a class of German, then it's going to be display of none. So then we're going to hide it over here. So once we save it, if we're going to go back to the browser just so we can see it better, and once we refresh, let's make the screen size a little bit bigger over here. See over here we have 11 items. Now once I'm going to click on the American, notice over here we only have 6. Because we're looping over the node list, we're checking whether the car, each and every car that we're looping over, does it have the class of American or German. Now since we have pressed American, we're getting back a data filter value for American. Now the value is going to be equal to American. So obviously in this case, this value is not going to be equal with the German car. So the German car is going to fail whatever we're passing over here. The German car is not going to have a value of class of American, it's going to have a value of German. So in this case, we'll know that if this fails, so if this returns true, it does not have the class, then the display is going to be over here none. Now obviously, since the American cars do have the class, they're all going to be displayed block over here. Now we could have written this as another if and else statement. I just wanted to show you that a lot of times we can shorten our code by using the ternary operator. So let's go back over here, and once we have the American, let's do the same thing again with German. And again, we're looping over all the cars, then we're checking what kind of class they have and the class we inserted dynamically. And then if I'm going to press all, which is our first option, now all the cars are going to be showing that are in my node list. And this is how we can add this filter option for our inventory section.